Oh, this is breaking in. U.S. Attorney. They grew.
For a period of more than 3 years, spanning the run-up to the drug trial announcement in mid-2017. Collins himself was the company's largest shareholder. In or about the summer of 2017, a drug designed to treat a debilitating form of multiple sclerosis had entered the late stages of a phase 2B clinical trial. This drug, MIS-416, was the only viable drug in the pipeline for Innate. This is significant in that the company's value was nearly completely wrapped up in the success of the clinical trial and a subsequent phase 3 trial. On the evening of June 22, 2017, Collins received an email informing him that MIS-416 had failed its clinical trial. Electronic records indicate his initial shock at having received the news. The drug, once anticipated to hold billions of dollars in value, would now be the cause of significant financial loss for Innate and, of course, its investors, many of whom shared a personal relationship with Congressman Collins. While the congressman was legally bound to keep his information confidential until the trial results were released to the investing public 4 days later on June 26, we allege he did not. The indictment charges that Collins immediately began contacting the family and friends he had brought into the fold. This set off a ripple effect in which many investors, directly or indirectly connected to Congressman Collins, were notified. Most of them quickly sold their shares. Innate stock price plummeted 92% on the first trading day following the public announcement. But Collins' conspirators had saved themselves over $750,000 in losses. Collins himself, having been prohibited from selling his shares for various reasons, did not avoid a financial loss. Despite this fact, his alleged actions brought him face to face with federal agents who had become aware of the crime that had been committed. When questioned by law enforcement about the alleged dealings, Congressman Collins, his son Cameron, Cameron's fiance's father, Stephen Zarsky, lied plain and simple. Today they are charged with insider trading and lying to federal law enforcement agents. While Collins may have thought that giving his family and friends a heads up about material, non-public information would benefit them in the long run, here's a better inside tip for those who think they can play by a different set of rules. Access to this kind of information carries with it significant responsibility, especially for those in society who hold a position of trust. Act honorably and in accordance with the law, and do not lie to special agents of the FBI. Many thanks always to our partners, especially Jeff and your team of career prosecutors. Gentlemen, your work has been exceptional. To the SEC, I'd personally like to thank Stephanie and Steve for your work. Your team has also been outstanding. To John and John Cassell, who lead our white-collar branch, and to your team of special agents and investigators, I want to extend my personal appreciation. Some are standing in the back in the shadows, but to Nick, John, Yelena, and Tracy, your work has been exceptional. What you do in the community matters and makes a difference. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. I'd like to invite to the podium Stephanie Avakian, Co-Director of Enforcement at the SEC.
Thanks, Jeff. Good afternoon. As Jeff said, my name is Stephanie Avakian, and I'm co-director of the SEC's Division of Enforcement. And before I begin my remarks, I'd like to also thank U.S. Attorney Jeff Berman and his prosecutors, as well as the FBI, who worked on this matter, for their assistance. Today, the SEC filed securities fraud charges against Congressman Christopher Collins, his son Cameron Collins, and 3 others, alleging that they engaged in insider trading ahead of Innate Immunotherapeutics' announcement of negative drug trial results in June 2017. The SEC's complaints allege that Christopher Collins learned of the negative news in his capacity as a member of Innate's board of directors and quickly tipped Cameron Collins, who held a large position.
You're watching the enforcement officer from the SEC following the FBI deputy director, and also for that region, and also Jeff Berman, the U.S. attorney, who replaced Preet Bharara, I believe, as a Trump nominee. This is totally separate from the Mueller investigations, as Chuck Todd was just saying. I want to bring in Casey Hunt, because Casey, Congressman Collins is on the ballot, and according to New York state law, there is no way for him not to be reelected.
Right.
If the voters choose to reelect him, Donald Trump won that district by 59% of the vote. Chris Collins was the first member of Congress, completely the first member of Congress to endorse Donald Trump, the candidate, before even Jeff Sessions did from the Senate, and his most loyal supporter and his congressional liaison during the transition.
At a time when there was literally no one in the Republican Party who was holding elective office at the federal level who would stand next to President Trump. Chris Collins is the guy who did. He took that leap, and we know how the Trump family views loyalty like this. But you're right, he's likely to be reelected. There's no real way to strip him off the ballot without Collins' consent in doing so. And let's not forget, there's history of members of Congress continuing to serve even when they're under a cloud of indictment. It's
Democrats
happened.
As well as Republicans. And that's why, interestingly, the Democratic leader, Nancy Pelosi, put out a statement sharply criticizing him and talking about the corruption. But no one in Congress and leadership is calling for him to step down pending a conviction. And Chuck, join us here because Senator Menendez stayed through a very contentious trial and was acquitted and is still, the ranking member of the Foreign Relations Committee.
Casey's right in this respect. If you look at the history of members of Congress who have been under investigation, and you talk to the ones that agreed to leadership demands that they resign, and those that didn't, the ones that resign always regret it. They always look back and think, oh, I could have beaten it, or maybe I could have survived. I'll tell you this, though. In this environment, the amount of attention this is going to get, look, this is a solid Republican district, but his Democratic opponent is a local elected official. He's a township supervisor, not in Buffalo, but in and around that area. He's not unviable, is my point here.
Exactly.
And so I wouldn't totally write it off. But I do think the calculation is this, Andrea, and if I were Steve Stivers, by the way, talking about, like I said, the guy's already had a rough week, rough night in Ohio, then you wake up to this. Now, like I said, I brought up there's a whole Virginia Beach problem, too, with an incumbent member down there, Scott Taylor, a local special prosecutor investigating petition signature fraud, right? So you had all these little headaches. But if you're Stivers, you say to yourself, you go, you know what? Rather than trying to figure out how to get a new candidate on the ballot, you probably got a 55% chance that Collins can eke this out. Although I would remind you, remember Dan Rostenkowski back in the day, Andrea? He was under investigation, and people thought, yeah, well, not that district. Yeah, guess what? That district, too, went down in 94. It can happen. But if you're the Republicans here, the best thing to do, just politically, would be see if Collins survives, and then if he does, force him out, and maybe you can win a special in the spring of 19 or something.
And let me just also point out, because some people may have as well a long memory, this issue of this stock came up with another sitting member of Congress, who was Tom Price. He was being nominated to be HHS secretary. Now, he ended up stepping down after all sorts of allegations about improper use of expensive charter flights, and it never was this issue. But he was questioned about his stock sales here and whether or not he had gotten some tips from his friend and colleague, Chris Collins. So nothing was ever alleged, nothing is being alleged, and he has not been charged in this, so there's no evidence against him. But this was an issue in that confirmation as well. There's a whole drain the swamp issue here that has not been fully addressed. Kristen Welker is standing by as well at the White House. Kristen, the White House keeps, buffeting away any allegations about insider this and insider that and corruption. But this is the first person to endorse the candidate, Donald Trump.
It's going to be very difficult, Andrea, for President Trump to distance himself from Chris Collins for that very reason. This is the first person to endorse President Trump, someone who is sort of an unofficial liaison to the transition team. And so President Trump is going to have to come out and say something. Now, I can tell you, I've reached out to a whole host of White House officials. I asked Mercy Schlapp, she's the strategic communications director, effectively, look, what is your reaction to this breaking news? She said, I refer you to DOJ. So she didn't have any immediate response to that. Right now, they're sort of trying to brush aside questions. Of course, we continue to look at our Twitter feed to get the president's reaction to all of this. How has he typically responded? He digs in. You raised the issue of Tom Price. Tom Price was under scrutiny, under criticism for months before ultimately he left this administration. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a similar approach. But of course, the stakes are different because we are getting closer to the midterms. Of course, you had all of those warning signs overnight, and the president himself right now weighing whether to do an interview with special counsel Robert Mueller. We know that his team of lawyers is poised to submit a counter proposal to Mueller's team's latest proposal. So there's a lot that's hanging over this president as he tries to determine how to respond to this latest controversy, Andrea.
And count me as skeptical about any real negotiations going on until we hear about it from the Mueller team, because we've heard so many over months and months and weeks now from Rudy Giuliani.
January, yes.
Right. And we only have it from one side and from one part of one side, which is not from the president himself. So they're making it look as though the president really does want to cooperate and have an interview, but who knows? I'm totally unconvinced about that. So let me also bring in Daniel Goldman, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, now an NBC News legal analyst, happily. And Daniel, you know very well these kinds of cases. You've prosecuted some of these very cases in that district.
Yes, I prosecuted an insider trading case against the Las Vegas gambler Billy Walters last year, and that case was better known because Phil Mickelson was wrapped up in it, though not charged. And this is a powerful indictment, and what you're seeing here related to Chris Collins is that he is the insider. He's the guy who had the information that was supposed to be kept confidential. He was on the board of directors of this company, and as soon as he gets the information that is going to tank the stock, which ultimately went down 92% when the information was made public, he relayed it to his son, who then relayed it to a whole host of other people, all of whom were owners in this stock and all of whom sold their shares of stock, or at least attempted to sell their shares of stock. So there's no Rick Gates type of cooperating witness here. It still remains to be seen who the witnesses are, what kind of evidence they have. It's hard. I've been trying to study the indictment and figure out a little bit. I think some of the people who are mentioned as CCs, co-conspirators, likely are cooperating with the government and will testify, which could add a whole nother wrinkle because they seem to be all family members. But this is in insider trading cases, what you look for, and I'll draw the analogy to the Manafort case just because it's going on and we've been talking a lot about it and people have been talking about how it's a document case. In insider trading cases, the critical documents are the records of phone calls and the records of trades. And what you see in this indictment is incredibly closely timed calls and trades related to information. I mean, it alleges basically that Representative Collins got an email at 6:55 p.m. that informed him of the inside information, and by 7:10 p.m. he's trying to reach his son, who then immediately tries to make a trade. That is documentary evidence that is very powerful.
And in fact, Daniel, what they are now saying there is that 6 times, he called his son 6 times in 5 minutes from the south lawn of the White House, from the congressional picnic.
Yes.
So that is incredibly detailed. They obviously have the phone records and they've got the trading records. So
right.
One doesn't know what cooperating witnesses they would need
to do
right.
this.
And, you know, calling from the White House grounds, that sort of adds a very colorful, shall we say, political note to all of this that can be very persuasive, one would think, to a jury. If it ever gets to a jury, we don't know how long. Now, the other question I would have is, you have such familiarity with this, Daniel. How long would it take with pretrial motions and all the rest? When would this come to trial? Before November?
Absolutely not. No way it will go to trial before November. I would expect, I don't know who the judge is. A lot of it depends on how quickly judges set trials, but this won't go to trial until 2019.
And in fact, Jeff Berman, the U.S. attorney, just said that this indictment comes far enough away from the election. And so who knows what's going to happen on Election Day. Stranger things have happened. In one of the cases I first covered, a dead man was elected nominated to Congress because that fit what the party wanted to do in a Democratic district in Philadelphia back in the day. Anyway,
But, you know, just on that point, Andrea,
Yeah.
Bob Menendez remained in the Senate during his allegations and trial, so wouldn't be crazy for him to do the same.
And was acquitted. Thank you very much. We will be right back. Thank you, Daniel. And coming up, the political team stays in place because razor thin, that congressional race in Ohio, still too close to call. But is it part of a larger trend for the upcoming midterms? That's ahead right here. Stay with us.
Love.
I got you, baby.
It's being there when you're needed most.
That's the one.
Love is knowing it was meant to be. And love always keeps you safe. Love is why we built a car you can trust for a long time. The all-new Subaru Impreza sedan and 5-door. A car you can love, no matter what road you're on. The Subaru Impreza. More than a car, it's a Subaru. Right now, get 0% APR financing on the 2018 Subaru Impreza.
I never thought I'd say this, but I found bladder leak underwear that's actually pretty. Always Discreet Boutique. Hidden inside is a super absorbent core that quickly turns liquid to gel. So I feel protected and pretty. Always Discreet Boutique.
There's a lot to love about Medicare. There's also a lot to know. The most important thing, Medicare doesn't pay for everything.
Yep, you're on the hook for the rest.
So consider an AARP Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan insured by United Healthcare Insurance Company. A plan like this helps pay some of what Medicare doesn't, so you could end up paying less. And these are the only plans of their kind endorsed by AARP, selected for meeting their high standards of quality and service. Call United Healthcare Insurance Company now to request this free decision guide and learn more. Like, Medicare supplement plans give you the freedom to go with any doctor who accepts Medicare patients.
It's nice to have a choice.
And your coverage goes with you, anywhere you travel in the country.
We have grandkids out of state.
They love our long visits.
Not sure about their parents, though.
Call United Healthcare and ask for your free decision guide today.
For every type of home project, HomeAdvisor finds trusted local pros. For every type of pro, you can read verified ratings and reviews. For every type of project, you can check what others have paid for similar jobs. And for everybody's busy schedule, HomeAdvisor lets you check pros' availability and book appointments online. For every project, you have HomeAdvisor. Go to HomeAdvisor.com or download the free app.
It's Nutrisystem's Red Hot Sale. Celebrate summer and save 40% off every program, including Turbo 13. Lose up to 13 pounds and 7 inches overall in your first month. Lose weight now. Money back guaranteed.
I'm Marie and I lost 50 pounds with Nutrisystem. I am so much healthier now.
Nutrisystem delivers your favorite foods made healthier. Perfectly portioned to fuel and satisfy.
Count, measure, meetings, not with Nutrisystem.
Order your 28-day program right now and we'll rush you Turbo 13 with the new Turbo Takeoff Week with new foods. Plus a week of probiotic and delicious Turbo Shakes free to shrink your belly and lose weight.
You'll see results your very first week.
For a limited time, save 40% off every program.
Nutrisystem works.
Do it. Do it now. Don't wait.
Go online or call 888-455-DIET and get shakes free plus 40% off every program.
First word you think of when you see some of the lowest options fees in the market and no platform fees. Is it happy? Good. Then it's time for Power E-Trade, the platform price and service that gives you the edge you need. E-Trade, the original place to invest online.
Well, it's the morning after President Trump is patting himself on the back, claiming victory in that pivotal Ohio special congressional election. But it is still too close to call, and it will not be decided for at least another 10 days when thousands of provisional ballots are counted that could determine whether the contest gets so narrow that it goes into a recount. Trump endorsed Troy Balderson, the Republican, is holding a slim lead over Democrat Danny O'Connor in the Buckeye State's 12th district, 1,700 plus votes, a longtime Republican stronghold, with the candidates facing off again in 3 months, no matter how things play out in the coming days. Big question now for the president and his allies in Congress. Are recent Democratic gains in special elections and Republican districts across the country a sign of an approaching blue wave crashing into the Capitol? Joining me now, MSNBC's Garrett Haake, up all night in Ohio's 12th District. Chuck Todd back with us. First to you, Garrett. This election last night, and I know you had a late night of vote counting, but the fact is, this district has been red since Ronald Reagan was elected. And now you've got a 1,700 vote margin. May or may not go into special, but the two candidates know they're going to face off in November in any case, right?
Yeah, let's set aside the question of who ultimately wins in the short term here today. Again, as you point out, this race will be run again in November. Just the fact that I'm here, that reporters are covering this race, that we're paying attention to this district at all, is an indication of the problems that Republicans have as they go into November. As you said, this district has not been a Democratic district in the lifetime of the Democratic candidate who is running here. It's been reliably Republican all that time. It's your classic John McCain, Mitt Romney, John Kasich kind of district. And the fact that Republican voters are peeling a little bit away from the president in places like this, and that Democratic voters, who a lot of folks didn't necessarily even believe existed, were rushing to the polls yesterday, really driving up turnout in Franklin County, where I am, the Columbus area here, the Columbus near suburbs, is problematic for Republicans all around the country in districts that look an awful lot like this in every state, Andrea.
And I misspoke. I referenced a special election. I meant an automatic recount if it does get that narrow. Chuck, the significance of this, first of all, it really is striking that they spent some $3 million plus. That's, what, 10% of the Sheldon Adelson big campaign fund? Why would they spend that much money in this kind of district, or need to? And can they do that in 435 other districts?
Well, they can't do it in 435 districts, but the reason you do it in these districts is you send a message to the current Republicans running that you're fighting for every race. Like, you start giving up, you start walking away, then it's Katie bar the door, and you lose these races, then, bad gets worse, right? At least now Steve Stivers, the chair of the NRCC, can say, hey, we found a way to find that some of you can survive. Here's the playbook, right? Now, that's what I'm trying to figure out, though. Is this the playbook for survival or not in a district like this? Like, I looked at last night, and Garrett's right. It's as if this district created more Democrats than we thought existed in that district. But it really is this John Kasich wing of the party, the suburban Republican voter, who we've been watching since November of 16, Andrea, starting to make its way to the blue side of the ballot box, right? It started in Georgia 6, not quite enough to flip it. Then you saw what happened in the Northern Virginia suburbs, which made it look like it was New York City, not Northern Virginia, in the Virginia governor's race. Then we saw it in Pennsylvania 18. Now here we are here. Look, last night, Missouri 2. That is the suburbs of St. Louis. I was just looking at the other election result. Basically, a carbon copy of this district in Ohio, okay? Turnout among Democrats there were more Democratic votes in that congressional primary than Republican votes. And yes, there was a contested race and one not, but that just is another indicator. The president is driving up suburban turnout whether he's there or not. So then the question is, does his presence somehow drive up enough of the base that it's worth the amount of turnout he may create with alienated swing voters, right? That's the question I can't answer about Ohio 12. Did the president's presence save the seat? And if that's the case, then it's even worse than I thought. Or did his presence actually help the Democrats at the end there and increase a surge in voting in Franklin County? I actually think it's probably the latter.
Yeah, I heard one argument last night that John Kasich endorsing a late endorsement of Balderson, the Republican, was more beneficial to him to try to persuade some of those educated Republican suburban voters than the president coming in for him.
That's more logical, Andrea. That's a more logical explanation than somehow the president goosed mediocre, somehow got turnout of his base to go from bad to mediocre, and that was the difference. I just don't, that's the part I don't buy. I think the president may have almost cost them this election, not the reverse. But that's something that I don't think we 100% could know.
Let me ask you about Kansas and Chris Kobach. Because, hang on just one second, Garrett. I just wanted to nail down what happened in Kansas with the Chris Kobach election, where he was such a controversial candidate.
We're still waiting. I mean, we still got votes to count. And if you look at what's look, the good news for the appointed governor there, Jeff Colyer, is that we're still waiting for votes in Johnson County, which is the most suburban county outside of Kansas City, Missouri, on the Kansas side of the border. So, you know, if Collier's going to make up that ground, that's the place to make it up. But that race is so close, it may be, that feels like recount for sure.
And that's a case where the president jumped into a Republican primary improbably.
Caused a huge problem. May have
Garrett,
put that race in jeopardy now.
And Garrett, you had a final thought there.
Yeah, just on this question of Trump and his effect on this district, the operating theory that I've heard from a lot of people on the ground here was that Trump showing up here on Saturday was probably a net positive for the Republican. It reminded a lot of Republican voters who may not have been paying attention to this special election that it was even happening at all, and it allowed them to connect Troy Balderson to the president. The president's existence in the White House is a negative in a lot of these districts because it has Democratic voters so fired up. But his actual showing up here seems to have been taken as a positive here on the ground.
Well, it's going to be debated for quite a while as we proceed in this election. Thank you so much, Chuck. Thanks for hanging in. We'll, of course, be watching you on MTV Daily and on Meet the Press. And Garrett, thanks very much for your coverage all night. Coming up, gates wide open, startling revelations about the prosecution's star witness during cross-examination and then redirect at the Manafort trial. We'll get the latest from the courthouse next on Andrea Mitchell Reports. Stay with us.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for the meeting last week. It was helpful to see our financial picture. When you asked what I'm doing to take care of myself, I didn't have much of an answer. It hasn't been easy to find the time since Michael's been gone. But the question was a good one. So today, I'm starting something for me.
Really? Man, this is what I feel like when I wear regular shoes. Cramped and uncomfortable.
We can arrange a little upgrade.
Which is why I wear Skechers wide fit shoes. They have extra room throughout. They're like a luxury ride for my feet. Try Skechers wide fit shoes.
Roman. For the first time ever, you can get ED meds prescribed online, shipped discreetly to your door. No more waiting rooms, awkward talks, or lines at the pharmacy. Get your first month free at GetRoman.com/TV.
Let's take a look at some numbers. 4 out of 5 people who have a stroke, their first symptom is a stroke. 80% of all strokes and heart disease, preventable. And $149 is all it takes to get screened and help take control of your health. We're Lifeline Screening. And if you're over 50, call this number to schedule an appointment for 5 painless screenings that go beyond regular checkups. We use ultrasound technology to literally look inside your arteries for plaque which builds up as you age and increases your risk for stroke and cardiovascular disease. And by getting them through this package, you're saving over 50%. So call today and consider these numbers. For just $149, you'll receive 5 screenings that could reveal what your body isn't telling you.
And I'm going to tell you that's the best $150 I've ever spent in my life.
Lifeline Screening. The power of prevention. Call now to learn more.
Got dry eye, but your eye drops don't last? Try Roto Dryade Eye Drops with Liquid Shield technology to help restore your natural tear film and soothe for up to 12 hours for longer lasting relief versus the leading brand. So choose your Roto.
Hi, I'm Bob Harper, and I recently had a heart attack. It changed my life, but I'm a survivor. After my heart attack, my doctor prescribed Brilinta. It's for people who have been hospitalized for a heart attack.
Brilinta is taken with a low-dose aspirin, no more than 100 milligrams, as it affects how well Brilinta works. Brilinta helps keep platelets from sticking together and forming a clot. In a clinical study, Brilinta worked better than platelets.
Brilinta reduced the chance of having another heart attack or dying from one.
Don't stop taking Brilinta without talking to your doctor, since stopping it too soon increases your risk of clots in your stent, heart attack, stroke, and even death. Brilinta may cause bruising or bleeding more easily, or serious, sometimes fatal bleeding. Don't take Brilinta if you have bleeding, like stomach ulcers, a history of bleeding in the brain. Slow heart rhythm has been reported. Tell your doctor about bleeding, new or unexpected shortness of breath, any planned surgery, and all medicines you take.
If you recently had a heart attack, ask your doctor if Brilinta is right for you. My heart is worth Brilinta.
If you can't afford your medication, AstraZeneca may be able to help.
With the new Chase In Business Unlimited card, I get unlimited 1.5% cash back. It's so simple, I don't even have to think about it. So I think about the details. Fine, I just said so many details.
Introducing Chase In Business Unlimited with unlimited 1.5%
And in the Paul Manafort trial, prosecution star witness Rick Gates has been dismissed after cross-examination redirect. Joining me now, NBC's national security and justice reporter Julia Ainsley at the courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia. He was really battered during cross-examination. All of the cheating and the embezzling and the admitted affairs, and how did the jury react to this witness?
It's a good question. There was one juror we paid particularly close attention to. His body language seemed to indicate he was very dismissive of Gates and didn't find him to be a trustworthy witness. There was also some drama, some fireworks right at the end. There's a lingering question that I don't know that jurors will get the answer to. Right at the end, when the defense was questioning Rick Gates, they said, okay, so how many times did you meet with the special counsel and you're prepped for this? And he said about 20 times. And then he said, did you ever mention to them that you had as many as 4 extramarital affairs? Right then we heard an objection from the prosecution, and the two sides deliberated with the judge. We couldn't hear what was said, but then that line of questioning was dismissed, and Gates was let go from the stand. So there's a big question, was there more than one affair? Did he lie to the FBI about those affairs? Because in that case, his plea agreement would be ripped up, and he could be sent to jail for the rest of his life. And then also, what does that say about Gates' credibility? He gave the long story yesterday about this affair he had in London 10 years ago, said he had apologized, worked things out with his wife. What else is he not telling the jury? And I think that was left as a question as he left the stand.
Well, one of the things he did reveal is something that we first reported on NBC News, which was that Manafort had gotten a $16 million bailout loan from a Chicago banker, not putting up very much at all for that loan when he was in real trouble. And in return, he was offering this Chicago banker with no qualifications to be Secretary of the Army at the Pentagon.
Which one are we going to?
That was confirmed in his witness. Do you see reaction to that? Because that could be something that is now brought up as the prosecution tries to regroup after fairly controversial testimony from the
reinforcements.
That's true. That's something that we heard yesterday. We might not hear it in this trial in particular, Andrea, because this has less to do with Paul Manafort's work as a Trump campaign manager. But we were able to get some of those details because, of course, Rick Gates did work on the inaugural committee and knew Manafort during his time as campaign chairman. When we might hear that come up again is when Manafort has a second trial, probably at the end of the
I was trying to shoot grenade and hit you.
Witness tampering and other things that he may have done that could be closer to his actual work on the campaign.
Julia Ainsley in Alexandria, thanks so much, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
It's time now for more business.
I was right behind, that guy, I was right behind that guy.
Northern Michigan was getting complaints from all sides. From customers to local officials, they didn't have good answers to problems like why their lines were so long. Find out how this company redeemed itself and saved its reputation on your business Sunday morning at 7:30 Eastern on MSNBC.
Or nice
Sponsored
hotel.
by the powerful backing of American Express. Don't do business without it.
That just feels better.
The line between work and life hasn't just blurred.
That's what I was asking.
It's gone.
So you used
That's
one
why
last
you need someone
time,
behind you.
but didn't really
Not
work.
just a card, an entire support system. Whether visiting the airport,
So, you're playing medic, right?
or even using those hard-earned points to squeeze
Basically medic.
time. No one has your back like American Express. So no matter where you're going, we're right there with you. The powerful backing of American Express. Don't do business without it. Don't live life without it.
Yeah, I'm saying reinforcements.
At Wayfair.com, we think that when the big stuff ships free, it's just better.
Cover better, crunch better, rock better, roll better, clean better. Yeah, better!
Oh, Wayfair has free shipping. Game changer.
Fast better, free better, everything's better when it's
Free shipping on orders over $49. Shop better at Wayfair.com.
You're just what I need.
We knew Angie's List had reviews of home pros.
But so do lots of websites.
I didn't want to pay.
Then I found out it's free. Wait, it's free?
Free to check ratings, read reviews.
And they'll even match your project with a few qualified pros for the job. Go to angieslist.com today.
Right over here.
Once upon a time, there was a simple box. Inside it, the most comfortable bed imaginable. Engineered by an award-winning team, on the Casper, life is but a dream.
Try it today at Casper.com.
At Farmers, we've seen almost everything, so we know
I can pick up armor, sweet.
even vengeful vermin.
Yeah, what glitch?
Oh look, this one. I'm up here.
Oh, speed.
We're all focused on this one.
No, I think there's like a phaser thing over here, then there's just me.
We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
Oh, there's someone here, someone here, someone here. Ah.
When it comes
to the other one,
it's all about choice. Like our choice to citrus marinate only fresh, never frozen chicken. Our choice to always grill it slow over an open flame. And of course, our choice to never compromise. But now, the choice is all yours. Bring home a family choice dinner today with your choice of bacon avocado or avocado mango salad, 8 pieces of our famous fire grilled chicken, and 2 delicious sides, all for just $20. El Pollo Loco, fresh from the grill.
Remember when you weren't supposed to sit too close to the screen?
There's no one near the camera.
And video games were antisocial. TV was in the den. And loud music was for the basement. The future is fun, like crazy fun, and Spectrum's fiber-powered network is ready for it. No matter what VR, 8K, 3D entertainment the world comes up with. Are you ready for what's next? Spectrum, think forward.
Up his head. Mission failed. Get him next time.
More election news. A stunning election night upset in Missouri's Democratic primary for St. Louis County prosecutor.
Are you gonna get Black Ops 4 when it comes out?
McCullough was ousted by a relative political newcomer, Ferguson City Council member Wesley Bell. The significance of this is that tomorrow is the 4th anniversary of the Michael Brown death. McCullough came under national scrutiny and criticism for his handling of the investigation into the 2014 shooting of Michael Brown in
So I got
Ferguson.
breach charges and then the
Police. Joining me now,
the
Kimberly
grenade
Atkins,
thing.
Chief Washington reporter for the Boston Herald, and MSNBC contributor, and Jonathan Capehart, Washington Post opinion writer and an MSNBC contributor. Kimberly, this is significant because Wesley Bell,
he shoots a grenade.
was a council member in Ferguson, but he's acting. This prosecutor had been there since 1991.
Right, 7 terms. And,
well, you know if it's reinforced because it shows the things on it.
But this time, we're seeing this on a local level, people really galvanizing around the issue of criminal justice reform. We talk not just about the failure to prosecute the police officer who shot Michael Brown, but other issues like cash bail and sentencing reform, something that we're seeing a lot of energy in these local elections.
And we're talking about the anniversary tomorrow of Michael Brown, when we think of what transpired after that and all of the other related issues in other jurisdictions, Jonathan, this is a movement, and it's starting at the grassroots level.
Right, this is actually a piece that I'm working on frantically right now. The fact that tomorrow is the 4th anniversary, remember what was happening in the days immediately after, where we were watching on television a militarized response to civil disobedience of a population that we would find out later was basically living in what could only be described as like 1950s America, where they were being stopped excessively, fined excessively because those fines were excessive. They were being put in jail. So the majority African American community was being bled of time and money by a police force and a city government that was funding itself through these fines on the backs of poor people. A movement was started then. That came about a week after Eric Garner died, and the grassroots community was already energized due to the killing of Trayvon Martin.
That's me.
Months or years before. So what this victory shows 4 years later is that activism can have results if it is focused and persistent.
And we think about all this. This week is the anniversary in 1965 of the Voting Rights Act, which is under attack in so many jurisdictions. And what we're going to see this weekend, and we'll talk about this more tomorrow on the program, is Charlottesville. 1 year later. This weekend, another rally by white nationalists going to go to Charlottesville, a beleaguered community, still dealing with the results of the horror of the Charlottesville.
Yeah, I got him. Someone else got me.
And it's an election year where race is being used as a wedge issue. It's being used as a divider. But what
there he
it's
is
doing
in the next
is
room.
galvanizing forces on both sides. And I think this election in St. Louis County is an example of that. You're seeing that across the country. But on the flip side, you're seeing others emboldened to continue to hold white supremacist rallies ahead of this. This is where the racial divide is wider than ever in 2018.
Jonathan?
We'll see in a second.
The difference between Ferguson 4 years ago and
nice, the camera's being
today.
helpful.
Ferguson 4 years ago had a president of the United States and a Justice Department that had justice as its prism and went in there to do right. The United States today has a president of the United States who a year ago next week stood before the nation and said that there were very fine people who were white nationalists and Nazis.
And there were good people and bad people on both sides. Thank you very much. More to come. Kimberly Atkins. Look forward, Jonathan, to your writing on this subject. We will be reading it in the Washington Post, and that does it for this edition today. A busy day on Andrea Mitchell Reports. Thanks for being with us. Remember, follow the show online on Facebook and on Twitter at Mitchell Reports. Craig Melvin is up next in New York, right here on MSNBC.
That was a fascinating conversation there, Andrew. Good to see you, my friend. Good afternoon to you. Craig Melvin here at MSNBC headquarters in New York City. Congressman arrested. Prosecutors say one of the richest members of Congress engaged in insider trading and lied to the FBI. The big question now,
what it is.
Does it help Democrats paint the Republican Congress as corrupt and perhaps give them an advantage in November? Also ready to respond. President Trump's lawyer says he will respond today to Robert Mueller's request for an interview. And he's telling NBC News it will be a legitimate offer to try to make the interview happen. Plus, the Trump test. The president and his party flood the zone in Ohio and Kansas for key elections. But when it comes to November, will the court be too big to fully defend? We'll look at that in just a moment, but we start with the indictment of that New York congressman. Republicans barely had a chance to breathe after Tuesday's primaries before another scandal disrupted their midterm planning. Republican Congressman Chris Collins from upstate New York has been charged with sharing insider information on a pharma stock. Congressman Collins cheated our markets and our justice system.
So use the shotgun or the
other gun, that this is a nation of laws, and that everybody stands equal before the bar of justice.
And you need to be good at.
Once a little-known backbencher, he vaulted to the public's eye when on February 24th, 2016, he became the first House member to back the Trump campaign. After that, he seconded Donald Trump's nomination at the Republican National Convention. Trump's win gave Collins easy access to a White House that's dealing with its own scandals, including one former cabinet secretary caught up with trading in the same pharma stock. Today, Speaker Paul Ryan called for House investigation and said Collins will no longer be serving on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. In a statement, though, Collins' lawyers say, quote, "We are confident he will be completely vindicated and exonerated." Let's start with NBC News investigative reporter Tom Winter, who is there outside the courthouse. Tom, tell us about the FBI allegations. What do they say that Chris Collins and his son did?
Put it right there. Let's put it right there.
Yeah, so Craig, the key thing here is that they say that the congressman, by sitting on the board of this pharmaceutical company, came into possession of privileged material inside information. So basically, he was aware of material information about this company, specifically that a major drug trial that they had done had been a clinical failure. It's okay for him to know that. He's on the board of directors. What's not okay, the government says, and what is against U.S. law, is for him to then pick up the phone, call his son, let him know that information before the information had been publicly released by the company, and allow his son, his fiance, several other associates, a stockbroker, all to be involved in trading that stock, again, before it was publicly announced. Now, the congressman is not charged with trading any shares himself. As a matter of fact, all of his shares in the company were tied up on an Australian stock exchange, which is where the company is based. But but at the time that the information was known, they had stopped that stock from trading pending news. So at that point, the congressman couldn't have traded one way or the other. However, in the U.S., shares of that company were able to be traded, and that's what the government says the congressman called his son, actually from a congressional picnic on June 22nd of last year, from a congressional picnic at the White House. He tried on several occasions to reach his son, finally got through to him for several minutes and was able to detail the information according to the allegations in the indictment today, Craig, and that's when this alleged insider trading occurred. And then there's also the allegations that he lied to the FBI.
Yeah, my C4 planned right there in case we need to.
Tom Winter here in New York City with more on that. Tom, thank you. Per his lawyers, part of Collins' defense is that Collins himself did not sell any of the Innate Pharma stock.
I made a little hole so we can watch beats too.
As Tom just alluded to there. But this timeline that we're going to show you now of events may explain why. Again, this is all according to law enforcement. Here's the timeline. On June 22nd, 2017, Innate CEO learns of trial results. That CEO then publicly requests a halt in trading on Australian markets, which, again, common there, and emails Collins at that point, calling the results of a clinical failure and extremely bad news. Collins cannot trade his shares, which are, again, on the Australian market. However, according to officials, he calls his son, whose shares are listed on the U.S. market. June 23rd, June 26th, Collins' son sells almost 1.4 million shares. This helps him to avoid more than $570,000 in losses. He also tips off some friends who also avoid losses. Night of June 26th, Innate publicly releases the results of that drug trial. The next day, the stock drops more than 92%. Danny Savalos is an MSNBC legal analyst. Jake Sherman covers Congress for Politico, and Zeke Miller covers the White House for the Associated Press. Jake, let me start with you because I want to read something for our viewers and listeners. This is something that you tweeted, your reporting from January of 2017. Quote, overheard in the Capitol, New York Rep. Chris Collins talking loudly into a phone just off the House floor, bragging about how many millionaires I've made in Buffalo in the last month. He was bragging about a stock tip he'd shared with people. Again, this is your reporting, January of last year.
Nice.
Are there other congressmen who should be worried, Jake Sherman?
Yeah, MVP.
I can't tell you whether they should be worried. I can tell you, as we, in Playbook PM, we laid out a number of congressmen who were invested in this stock across the board. Republicans in Texas, Republicans in Oklahoma, who some of them have said they got this tip from Chris Collins, who is on the Energy and Commerce Committee, the committee that oversees the pharmaceutical business. And I think we should just take a step back here. This election, Democrats have been looking for a theme. They've wanted to make this an election about the swamp and about Washington, about Republicans who are just not acting on the level in their duties. And they seem to have been handed this on a silver platter. You have the president's campaign manager, former campaign manager, on trial in Virginia. You have a congressman who was indicted not for insider trading, but in an insider trading scheme. You have a whole host of issues right now that indicate that Republicans could be run against as kind of swamp creatures who have not treated public office well. This is a theme that Democrats ran on back in 2006. So you compound this with the issue that we saw yesterday. Democrats gaining ground on Republicans in this very strong district here in Columbus. And you kind of paint a picture of not impending doom, but serious political problems for Republicans.
And again, just hours after that special election, a number of other news-making elections around the country. Danny, how much trouble, again, we should note here, these are allegations at this point, but based on what we know, how much trouble is the congressman in?
The allegations in the indictment are very bad for the congressman. Now, the law recognizes two kinds of people when it comes to insider trading. There's the tipper, and then there's the tippee. Now, Collins, it's not required that he actually lost money or gained money as a result. He's a tipper. He had insider information, and information that, according to the allegations in the indictment, was information under company policy that was not to be disclosed. So when you look at the facts as alleged in the indictment, they show someone learning via email. That's a clear paper trail that this test went badly for the product. And then you show these allegations allegations of the phone records as he supposedly frantically calls his son
from the White House
times in a row, right, from the White House, multiple times in a row until he answers, and then there's a 6-minute phone call. And this is the kind of case where even if you don't have a recording of what was said on that phone call, the inference to be drawn from that evidence, from that circumstantial evidence, is very compelling indeed. And then, of course, after that, you have all of these tippees who are selling and avoiding the disaster that was the result of this negative report.
U.S. attorneys typically don't bring charges like this unless they feel like it's a slam dunk case, I would assume.
U.S. attorneys build their case. They decide there's something afoot, and they spend lots of time building their case until they finally seek an indictment. And when a federal case is indicted, it usually leads to a conviction in something on the order of 94 to 95%.
Zeke, I want to play something that President Trump said about this particular congressman. This would have been last year, July of last year. Take a listen.
Congressman Chris Collins, where's Chris? Where's Chris? Well, Chris, right from the beginning, he said Trump is going to win. Trump is going to win. That's why I like him. I didn't like him that much before. Now I love him. I'll never...
One would assume that someone's already working on a campaign ad featuring that.
You can certainly assume that, as Jake mentioned, this does feed into the broader narrative right now for Republicans. The problem that they have, this perception problem, President Donald Trump ran saying he was going to drain the swamp, and in fact, Democrats now have a fairly, they have a lot of details which used to paint a picture of the swamp getting swampier with President Trump in the White House. And that's going to be a problem both for Republicans this November, but also for President Trump in 2020, whether it be the cabinet secretaries and the conduct of his cabinet agencies over the last 18 months or so when he's been in office, the number of resignations, scandals in those agencies. All of that paints a picture that it will be challenging not just for the president's party, but for the president himself over the next 2 years as he contemplates his own reelection.
Zeke, any word from the White House yet today about these charges?
No, nothing yet. And it's interesting because, not to belabor the point too much, but the president was somebody who campaigned saying he was going to surround himself with only the best people. And it seems that all the people the president has surrounded himself with, and obviously the president's not connected to this case, but he's surrounded himself with an awful lot of people who seem to attract scandal themselves.
And again, Jake, to be clear here, we're not just talking about any congressman. This is a congressman from New York. Even by standards in Congress, and there are a lot of wealthy men and women who serve. Here's a guy that was worth upwards of $65 million. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he's not he's at the top of the pack. There are not many members of Congress, although Congress is broadly thought about as a wealthy institution, and there are very rich people, but few people who are worth upwards of tens of millions of dollars, and Collins is obviously one of them. He had, on paper, I believe, between $25 and $50 million at one point in this stock. And you look, and just to reiterate, because this is important, John Culberson, an endangered Texas Republican, had this stock. Mike Conaway, a Texas Republican who was involved in the Russia probe, had this stock. So this stock that Collins was invested in Australia, many of his colleagues, a few of his colleagues actually, were invested in this as well. And we quote Doug Lamborn, a Colorado Republican in the House of Representatives, who conceded he took a bath on this stock and lost more than $10,000. So the word of this stock clearly had gotten around Capitol Hill from this man, in many cases, Chris Collins, close to the president and a very wealthy member of Congress, on, again, a very powerful committee that oversees the pharmaceutical industry. We can't overstate that enough. Oversaw the pharmaceutical industry on the Energy and Commerce Committee.
Jake Sherman for us in Ohio, which we will be talking about in mere moments. Jake, thank you. Zeke, always good to have you. Danny Cevallos, thanks for your insight as well. Key witness, the defense team for the former Trump campaign chairman gets its first crack at Robert Mueller, star witness, and painted him as a thief and a cheater. We also have some breaking news from the president's personal attorneys telling NBC News he has made what he calls a legitimate offer to Robert Mueller to set up an interview with the president. Plus, Trump tests. Trump-backed Republicans outperforming expectations in early races. But come November, things are going to get a lot more complicated. We'll look at that, and plus breaking hate. A year after Charlottesville, we'll share the story of a man who attended last year's white supremacist rally He now says he's found God and changed his life.
Plaque psoriasis can be relentless. Tremfya is for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis.
I'm ready.
With Tremfya, you can get clearer and stay clearer. In fact, most patients who saw 90% clear skin at 28 weeks stayed clearer through 48 weeks. Tremfya works better than Humira at providing clearer skin, and more patients were symptom-free with Tremfya.
Tremfya may lower your ability to fight infections and may increase your risk of infections. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or have symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough. Before starting Tremfya, tell your doctor if you plan to or have recently received a vaccine.
Ask your doctor about Tremfya. Tremfya, because you deserve to stay clearer. Janssen wants to help you explore cost support options.
This is not a bed. It's a high-tech sleep revolution. The Sleep Number 360 smart bed intelligently senses your movement and automatically adjusts, so you wake up ready to run the world. The new Sleep Number 360 smart bed from $9.99.
I'm gonna get a bar put in over there. Do you know any good contractors? Yeah, I might. Nice. Give me a bunch of quotes, check the reviews, and verify the credentials and qualifications.
You can't expect your neighbors to do everything HomeAdvisor can, so just ask HomeAdvisor.
So I have this recurring dream. I'm 85 years old in a job where I have to wear a giant hot dog suit.
What? Where's that coming from?
I don't know. I started my 401k early. I diversified. I'm not a big spender.
That sounds like you're doing a lot.
But I still feel like I'm not going to have enough for retirement, like there's something else I should be doing.
With the right conversation, you might find you're doing okay.
So no hot dog suit.
Unless you want to.
No.
Schedule a complimentary goal planning session today with TD Ameritrade.
So you have your headphones, chair, and your laptop, 24/7 tech support.
Yep, these guys. I think he might need some support.
Yes.
Start them off right with the school supplies they need at low prices all summer long. Like these for only $1 or less at Office Depot Office.
The only way to predict our future is to create it. As long as we can choose for ourselves, we decide what tomorrow holds. For when it comes to our life, our health, every choice we make matters.
Another truckload of Toyotas. What a sight.
Yeah, during Toyota's national clearance event, we've got the last of the 2018s. And super low APR financing.
Maybe that's why they go so fast.
Okay, that's got to be a record.
Right now, at Toyota's national clearance event, you can get incredible deals on the last of the 2018s. Offers end September 4th. To learn more about all our great deals, visit Toyota.com.
Save on the last of the 2018s. Come in today.
Toyota, let's go places.
A global citizen stands up for human rights and makes the world a better place. We at MSNBC believe this generation of global citizens can make a difference for generations to come. Download the Global Citizen app and learn how you can provide people around the globe with access to clean water. When you do, you'll earn points for tickets to the Global Citizen Festival in New York City.
Be a global citizen.
And be the generation to end global poverty.
Some breaking news now in the special counsel's Russia investigation. NBC News has now learned that President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, says he has just responded in writing to Robert Mueller's request for an interview with the president.
Yeah, we do. It's about time that it ends. I also think, and I hope the special counsel is as sensitive to it as we are, we do not want to run into the November elections. So you back up from that. This should be over with by September 1st. We have now given him an answer. He obviously he should take a few days to consider it. But we should get this resolved.
All right, good. That's from a short time ago radio show there, Giuliani with Jay Sekulow. Carolyn Polisi is a federal and white-collar criminal defense attorney. Let's start with this breaking news here. A sit-down between Bob Mueller and President Trump. We've been talking about it for several months now. Is it something that is likelier to happen today than it was yesterday or the day before that?
I think as time goes on, it's less and less likely. Quite frankly, I think everything that's gone on up until this point has been theatrics. I don't think President Trump has any intention of ever sitting down with Robert Mueller. And honestly, the conditions that Giuliani has placed, publicly stating, you know, we'll only talk about, we won't talk about obstruction of justice, we'll only talk about potential collusion, and we want to do written answers. That's ridiculous. It's Robert Mueller who's going to set the tone and set the agenda for a meeting that he may or may not have with President Trump. And he has the law on his side. If he has to take it to a subpoena, it will go to the Supreme Court. And in my opinion, the Supreme Court will say that President Trump must sit.
Based on what? What would be the precedent?
Well, I mean, the Nixon obviously is the precedent, but that was about tapes. There hasn't been a specific case on point about a president delivering testimony before a grand jury. But I think if you read the Nixon case, it would all sort of extrapolate to saying that the president is not above the law. That's the overarching theme of our Constitution. No one is above the law.
Let's turn to the Manafort trial here down in Virginia. Our reporting is that defense attorneys continued their attacks today on Rick Gates by bringing to light that he's had at least 4 affairs. We know that Gates cut a deal, if you will, to cooperate and provide testimony against Manafort. Is the revelation that he had these affairs and some of the other stuff that's been revealed in court, could that affect the plea deal that Rick Gates cut with prosecutors?
Well, the question is actually the question about whether or not he actually had 4 affairs as opposed to 1. They didn't actually answer that. Gates didn't actually answer that question because there was an objection and they moved on. Nonetheless, the jury heard the question and likely that's going to stick in their mind. The question is whether or not that's going to prejudice them if they think this is what the defense has been trying to do over and over again, saying you're a liar, you're a cheat, you're a bad person, you cheated on your wife. You know, why should we believe you? Why should this jury believe you now? Yes, if he lies on the stand about anything, that eviscerates his cooperation agreement. You know, many people think that the deal has been signed on the dotted line and it's over. Absolutely not. There is a long road to cooperation, and what's going to happen is the prosecutors are going to write a letter, which is called a 5K1 letter, to the sentencing judge when Gates gets sentenced to detail exactly the extent of his cooperation. And if it goes well, then they wouldn't oppose a request for a non-custodial sentence. So
even without Gates' testimony, though, do prosecutors at this point have enough of a paper case to convict Paul Manafort?
They really do. Enough so that there was even a question of whether or not they were going to put Gates on the stand. Remember, right in the beginning of this trial, they said they weren't exactly sure if they were going to put him on the stand. And even just reading this indictment, this is a speaking indictment. It lays out in perfect order just how this crime was committed. It is. It's a paper case. I said in the beginning that this was going to be a snooze fest because, you know, white-collar cases of this nature often are very, heavy in documents, and it's quite complicated. But they're sandwiching their star witness, so they're going to do the documentary evidence first, then they had Gates, and they're going to finish up strong with more documentary evidence.
Caroline Polisi, thank you. Thank you very much. Right now, the city of Charlottesville, Virginia, preparing for demonstrations this weekend on the anniversary of last year's deadly clashes during a white supremacist rally. How the city is getting ready and what we have learned about ourselves as a nation since that terrible day.
Hate is on the rise in America. I've dedicated my life to pulling people out of hate. I know how these people think because I used to be one of them.
Managing my type 2 diabetes wasn't my top priority until I held her. I found my Traceba reason. Now I'm doing more to lower my A1C. I take Traceba once a day. Traceba controls blood sugar for 24 hours for powerful A1C reduction.
We'd been counting down to his retirement. It was our Traceba reason. He needs insulin to control his high blood sugar, and at his age, he's at greater risk for low blood sugar. Traceba releases slow and steady and works all day and night, like the body's insulin.
Traceba is a long-acting insulin used to control high blood sugar in adults with diabetes. Don't use Traceba to treat diabetic ketoacidosis, during episodes of low blood sugar, or if you are allergic to any of its ingredients. Don't share needles or insulin pens. Don't reuse needles. The most common side effect is low blood sugar, which may cause dizziness, sweating, confusion, and headache. Check your blood sugar. Low blood sugar can be serious and may be life-threatening. Injection site reactions may occur. Tell your prescriber about all medicines you take and all your medical conditions. Taking TZDs with insulins like Tresiba may cause serious side effects like heart failure. Your insulin dose shouldn't be changed without asking your prescriber. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing, fast heartbeat, extreme drowsiness, swelling of your face, tongue, or throat, dizziness, or confusion.
I found my Tresiba recently. Find yours.
Ask your healthcare provider about Tresiba. Covered by most commercial health insurance and Medicare Part D plans.
What you don't see can hurt you. If you just monitor your credit, you can miss some identity theft threats. LifeLock now includes Norton to help protect you from even more threats. Join now at LifeLock.com.
My gums are irritated.
I don't have to worry about that.
Do I? Actually, you do. Harmful bacteria lurk just below the gum line.
Crest Gum Detoxify works below the gum line to neutralize harmful plaque bacteria and help reverse early gum damage. And now there's new Crest Gum and Enamel Repair. It gives you clinically proven healthier gums and helps repair and strengthen weakened enamel. Gum Detoxify and Gum and Enamel Repair. From Crest.
Gums are good. So is my checkup.
Crest. Healthy, beautiful smiles for life.
How do you win at business? Stay at La Quinta, where we're changing with stylish makeovers. Then, at your next meeting, set your seat height to its maximum level. Bravo, tall meeting man. Start winning today. Book now at lq.com.
Summer's calling. The 2018 Cadillacs are ready to move. Our best offers on 2018 models are here. Join us for the Made to Move sales event. Get 0% APR financing for 60 months plus $2,000 down payment assistance from Finance of GM Financial on most 2018 models.
It's Sit and Sleep's adjustable bed sale. Time to adjust your thinking about beds that are reading friendly, binge watching friendly, and taking pressure off your lower back friendly. Right now, save up to $1,000 on adjustable beds from America's best brands. And don't miss our clearance sale on adjustable base floor models with savings of up to 60% off. Plus, get 12 months of interest-free financing during our adjustable bed sale. Sit and Sleep will beat anyone's advertised price or your mattress is free. Good fun.
About 90 minutes from now, officials in Charlottesville, Virginia will outline security measures they're going to be taking as that city prepares to mark 1 year since those violent demonstrations by white supremacists rocked the city and left one person dead. We remember those torch-carrying protesters from the far right, which included Ku Klux Klan members, neo-Nazis, and other white nationalist groups, descended on Charlottesville over 2 days to voice support for the white nationalist movement and to oppose the removal of a Confederate statue of Robert E. Lee from a city park. The situation turned violent when marchers clashed with counter-protesters. One woman was killed when a protester allegedly deliberately rammed his car into the crowd there. 2 state troopers were also killed when their helicopter patrolling the area crashed. Eddie Glaude is chairman of the Center for African American Studies at Princeton University, and NBC's Morgan Radford is with us as well. Eddie, first of all, just in a macro sense, what did we learn from Charlottesville?
Well, we learned that white supremacists were more organized, that the White House was open to allowing or providing an avenue for them to be mainstream. What we learned is that the current of hate still runs strong in this country. And then we learned a couple of things as well, Craig, and that is one, that Roy Cohn was more offended by tariffs than he was by Donald Trump's waffling around white supremacists. We learned that white supremacist organizations have grown stronger since Charlottesville. Just think about it. Just last week or so, we had the Patriots Prayer in Portland, Oregon, where violence jumped off. 4 people were arrested between white nationalists and neo-Nazis and anti-protesters. We've seen that extraordinary documentary on PBS and Frontline documenting hate, where we see the growth of these organizations. So in some ways, what we've learned, Craig, at the end of the day is that we are standing at the precipice, that the country is in some ways experiencing a kind of racial tumult that we have to resolve and confront honestly.
Morgan, you actually recently spent some time with a guy who was was there, spent some time at the protest in Charlottesville, but has since had a change of heart, shall we say. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. In fact, today he expresses a lot of regret, not just for going to Charlottesville that day, but also for the fear that he says he single-handedly spread all throughout his own community. But most interestingly, he said there are a lot of others like him who are still in the white supremacist movement, and they're actually part of a growing new generation, he says. And the reason why he thinks they're joining might actually shock you. Ken Parker went to Charlottesville ready for a race riot.
It was thinly veiled to save our monuments, but we knew when we went in there that it was going to turn into a racially heated situation.
He was a neo-Nazi and a member of the KKK. So you would actually wear this when you all were burning crosses?
Yes, ma'am.
And this, oh, that's an actual cross burning behind you.
Yes.
Like hundreds of others that day, Ken was fueled by anger. Of all the things you could have picked to say, I want to be a part of this group and I want this to be a part of my identity, why whiteness?
I had gotten out of the Navy. It was really hard to get a job, and it's really easy to blame it on somebody else. You know, we have people with darker skin in our country, you know, taking my jobs.
Do you think this is a growing movement?
I think the more extreme people would come, they were the ones that came in under Obama. A vast majority of the recruiting calls had something to do with having a black man in the White House.
So Obama was part of your recruiting tool?
Yeah, absolutely.
But just 7 months after Charlottesville, Ken started having doubts.
Why hate these people just because they have different colored skin than you?
That's when he bumped into a man who made an offer that would change his life.
He invited me and my fiance to go to church, and I was like, well, it's worth a shot.
That man was a black pastor. So you've got a 70-person congregation now. They're all black, and just 3 white people, including you.
Yes, ma'am. And he called me up and asked me to share my testimony. I said I was a grand dragon of the KKK, and their jaws about hit the floor. But after the service, they're all coming up and hugging me and shaking my hand.
When we make it to heaven, heaven just not going to be one race. It's going to be all kind of races up there.
Ken knew he wanted to stay out of the white nationalist movement, which is why he reached out to someone who would understand.
Hey, what up, Ken? It's Arno.
Arno Michaelis is a recovered Nazi skinhead.
All of my swastikas have been covered, thankfully.
He basically runs an underground railroad for men like Ken, trying to escape hate groups.
Let's do it. Oh, yeah.
By helping them remove their tattoos.
This is going to be pain that you'll be grateful for the rest of your life.
And reconnect with society, a job he says is more important now than ever.
Thanks, man.
I think a big thing fueling hate group membership nowadays is the rhetoric from the White House. This rhetoric that immigrants are dangerous, that Islam is dangerous. That's all like the same kind of speech that we used 20 years ago in what we called the movement.
Now, just 1 year later, Ken is still navigating uncharted waters, turning the tide of hate
better than I did the last time I had a robe on.
into a wave of love. God bless you. Morgan Radford, NBC News, Jacksonville. But the story does not end there. He says he's actually now getting messages from people online asking how they can get out of hate groups just like he did. Ken says he knows he's caused a lot of pain for a lot of people, and he does hope, though, that this one small step towards making up for it. And he was also featured in a documentary before he actually left the movement, and if you're interested, you can watch it on Netflix. It's called White Right, Meeting the Enemy. Craig.
What's fascinating, one of the things, many things fascinating about that piece is you got one guy who said that he basically joined up because Barack Obama became president, and the other guy who's like, well, you know, President Trump has really made things a lot worse in this country.
That was what was most surprising. I've been covering these white supremacists for more than a year now, and a lot of them have all said, almost down to the T, that they feel like that the rhetoric coming from the White House has empowered them. But what Ken said was interesting. He said, while that may have empowered us in action, it was actually President Obama that empowered us in ideology, because the idea of seeing a black man in the White House was so offensive that they were moved to join.
Eddie, you know, we also just heard a gentleman say aloud what a lot of folks who look like us especially, have heard, but to actually hear someone, see someone say it on television is a lot different. What's your reaction to what we just saw there? And do changing attitudes, do they sometimes start with just one person?
Well, sometimes they do start with one person, and it's a great story. It serves its purpose, and I'm happy for him and his family. It gives us an example of what actual human contact, when we treat each other as human beings with full hearts and love, that what can be generated. But let's be clear, Craig. The hatred that animates this country is not easily just located with loud racists. What he said is that folks are blaming other folks because they've lost their jobs, because they can't afford college, because they can't bequeath to their children the American dream. And so they're saying that big government has been giving money to undeserving black and brown people, and those people have jumped ahead of white folks. And then there's the demographic insecurity. By 2045, America will be a majority-minority nation. So there's the economic insecurity combined with demographic insecurity, and then you have the folks in the White House, the insecurity of Donald Trump, feeding it in interesting sorts of ways. And so it's easy for us to look at the loud racists, to look at the loud bigots, and say, look at these bad people over there. That's American melodrama, because we need our villains so that we can be pure morally, and we need our happy endings. But what's interesting about this moment, and I'll say this really quickly, is that this is the American tragedy. This is not about loud racists. This is about us. Donald Trump is just simply an exaggerated indication of what's at the heart of the nation. And that's in the suburbs of Orange County. That's in the suburbs of Western Pennsylvania. That's in the cities of the South. That's in the rural area. That's all over the country. That's in Delaware County and Ohio. So it's easy for us when we come to Charlottesville a year later and we recognize and we celebrate the life that was Heather Hayers, for us to demonize the loud bigots. But what Charlottesville should do for us is to put a mirror in front of us so that we can see the ugliness in ourselves, and then perhaps we can get about the real work of achieving this country.
There's no following that. Eddie Glaude, thank you, sir. As always, Morgan Radford, fantastic reporting. Thank you as well. As we approach the anniversary of Charlottesville, there's a new movie out that tells the story of a black police detective who joined the KKK to investigate. I talked to the star who plays that detective about why he thought it was such an important project. What was the film about for you?
Seeing a group of people help this African-American man achieve the goal to execute this mission. They believed in the case, they believed in him, and they did not look like him, in that time in Colorado Springs.
Then on Sunday, MSNBC will be sharing the story of another former white supremacist who's dedicated his life to reforming others. You can watch Breaking Hate. That is Sunday at 9 o'clock Eastern only on MSNBC.
I have a lead on the great enemy of all people, Adolf Eichmann. The architect of the final solution? Latest intelligence suggests Buenos Aires.
If you want to get him out alive, we need an elite crew.
I would happily put a bullet in between his eyes, but this is strictly catch and extract. There is a problem with the plan. This is a country full of ex-Nazis. For the sake of our people, do not fail. Operation Finale, rated PG-13, August 29th.
Introducing the brand new South Beach Diet. I'm Jesse James Decker, and if y'all want to know how I stay in shape, I do it with the South Beach Diet.
Lose weight fast, burn fat, get leaner, and have more energy. Order your 28-day plan today with fully prepared meals delivered to your door. Breakfast, lunches, dinners, even snacks.
I lost 38 pounds.
It's healthy weight loss, easy to follow, and it works.
I lost 30 pounds on the South Beach Diet.
South Beach is a low-carb, low-sugar, high-protein program that burns fat and transforms your metabolism.
I lost 24 pounds.
Order your 28-day plan right now and receive a week of our all-new South Beach Complete Shakes free. They're packed with 20 grams of protein, no added sugar, a great source of probiotics, vitamins, and they taste great. Call or go online in the next 2 minutes and we'll even throw in free FedEx shipping. Lose weight fast, burn fat, get leaner, and have more energy.
Trust me, the South Beach Diet works. Call or click right now.
Call 877-807-PALM or go to southbeachdiet.com and get 1 week of shakes free.
We can't stay here.
Why?
Flat toilet paper. I'll never get clean.
Way ahead of you. Charmin Ultra Strong. It cleans better. It's 4 times stronger, and you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin. If you've been turned down for a mortgage because of credit or tax return issues, Cash Call Mortgage now has credit and income-solving mortgages for people like you. Just call 855-890-CASH, and we'll work with you to find a solution to your mortgage issues. This is Casper, the company bringing bedtime back to millions of happy sleepers. Try America's #1 rated mattress brand for 100 nights, risk-free. Unbox better sleep at Casper.com.
Your moderate to severe ulcerative colitis or Crohn's symptoms are holding you back, and your current treatment hasn't worked well enough. It may be time for a change. Ask your doctor about Entyvio, the only biologic developed and approved just for UC and Crohn's. Entyvio works at the site of inflammation in the GI tract and is clinically proven to help many patients achieve both symptom relief and remission. Infusion and serious allergic reactions can happen during or after treatment. Entyvio may increase risk of infection, which can be serious. PML, a rare, serious, potentially fatal brain infection caused by a virus, may be possible. This condition has not been reported with Entyvio. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, experience frequent infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Liver problems can occur with Entyvio. If your UC or Crohn's treatment isn't working for you, ask your gastroenterologist about Entyvio. Entyvio, relief and remission within reach.
You might take something for your heart or joints, but do you take something for your brain? With an ingredient originally discovered in jellyfish, Prevagen has been shown in clinical trials to improve short-term memory. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
Even more breaking news now on this Wednesday. This, according to the New York Times, just coming in. President Trump's lawyers have decided to counter Bob Mueller's interview offer. They are looking for a narrower scope. Again, you'll remember just a few moments ago we told you about Rudy Giuliani going on Jay Sekulo's radio show to indicate that they had provided this counter offer. We're now learning, according to the Times, that the president's attorneys, I guess it is this 8-month saga goes on now. Joined now by Elise Jordan. She's a former aide to President George W. Bush. She's also an MSNBC political analyst. Jason Johnson is a politics editor at TheRoot.com. He is also an MSNBC contributor. And Elise, let me just start with you. First of all, how surprised are you?
Well, Donald Trump's lawyers certainly don't want him to sit down with Robert Mueller, but Donald Trump himself has been adamant that he does want to do so. And this has been part of an extended dance that I think is almost emerging as a stall tactic, just to delay, and anything that the Trump camp can do to delay the findings of the Mueller investigation.
Jason Johnson, your initial reaction to this news here, again from the New York Times. We're working to confirm this independently.
It doesn't surprise me. They're going to try and make this as narrowcast as possible. We're not going to have a big meeting where Mueller can ask whatever he wants. We're not going to have a meeting where Trump can't have his lawyers. We're not going to have a meeting where you can't give him the questions in advance. I'm pretty sure if Trump's lawyers could get away with it, they would ask that he could respond to all the questions in tweets. I mean, because there's no way that they want a situation where Donald Trump is free to answer any kind of questions, because he's a pathological liar, and he's going to say something that will get him and possibly people who have worked with him in more legal trouble with Mueller.
According to the Times, one person here saying that Mr. Trump's lawyers did not want him answering questions about whether he obstructed justice. At least I guess that begs the question, if we know that the president's being investigated for obstructing justice and collusion, among other things, presumably, but if we know that he's being investigated for obstructing justice, how realistic is it to expect that the special counsel would agree to interview the president and not talk about obstructing justice?
It really makes no sense, and maybe someone with more of a legal background could explain, and maybe this is, something that lawyers do, but I know how journalists approach interviews, and you're going to ask the juicy question. There usually is like an intense back and forth, but if a journalist has a chance to ask a question, and this is how when I would work for people and prepping them for interviews, I would say expect the obvious questions to be asked, and in this case, certainly, questions about obstruction of justice and collusion are the obvious questions that Robert Mueller wants to know the answer to.
Jason, Rudy Giuliani, the president's, shall we say, outspoken personal attorney, also, according to the Times, said, quote, we're restating what we have been saying for months. It is time for the Office of Special Counsel to conclude its inquiry without further delay. Jason, is this something that September, October, as we approach the midterms, is this something that is actually going to galvanize voters? Is this something that voters are going to think about? Or is this something that we talk about here, but voters don't really care as much about?
I got to tell you, Craig, I was at Netroots Nation last week. I was in Detroit. I'm often in Ohio. I'm often in Georgia. Everybody knows how they feel about the Russian investigation at this point. So it's not a huge galvanizing factor one way or another. Republicans think that it's a terrible witch hunt. Democrats think that the President of the United States is constantly engaged in some sort of nefarious behavior with Russia or pretends that he doesn't know. But I think what's critical is this. When Giuliani consistently says, hey, we're not going to answer these kinds of questions, we're not going to answer that kind of questions, all it does is perpetuate this kind of investigation. All it does is make the investigation last longer. We just had breaking news today. It took, a year and a half for federal attorneys to get Collins, and he's a member of Congress. So to think that the Mueller investigation needs to be winding down after only a year when they've got to chase people across 5 time zones in other countries is ridiculous. And Trump knows that. He's just hoping he can stall.
This New York Times article that we're talking about was written by Maggie Haberman and Michael Schmidt. Michael Schmidt frequently breaks news around this time of day, and he frequently joins us by phone. Today, no exception. Michael Schmidt on the phone with this breaking news. At this point, Mr. Schmidt, do we know how wide the chasm is between the president and his attorneys and the office of the special counsel?
We think it's pretty significant at this point. We think that the president's lawyers are basically saying there's only a small number of obstruction questions that can be answered. They are deeply concerned about allowing the president to go on in an oral interview with investigators, and they're trying to narrow it as much as possible, sort of banking on the fact that they don't think that Robert Mueller will go ahead and subpoena the president, and he'll simply just want to interview him just to basically say he interviewed him. Other people find it hard to believe that Mueller would allow that to happen, and that Mueller will not do everything in his authority to try and get an interview with the president.
What makes them so confident that Bob Mueller won't subpoena the president?
I think there's some calculation in Trump world that Mueller will not want to lose a court battle over a subpoena, that he won't want to risk that if he goes to court to fight the president on compelling him to testify and he loses, it'll undercut the investigation's credibility publicly. If you talk to law enforcement officials who worked with Mueller, you talk to legal experts, they just say, look, Mueller's probably going to use every tool he has possible, including a grand jury subpoena, to try and get the president to talk. How can Mueller complete his investigation without asking the president whether he had criminal intent when he fired Comey and took these other measures that people say were intended to obstruct the Russia investigation?
Why are they, as you indicated there, why are his attorneys so concerned about the president going on and on with Bob Mueller in an interview?
Well, the president believes that he can explain to anyone anything, and especially in this case, he can explain to Mueller that he did nothing wrong, and he thinks that he can set the record straight. The problem is that Mueller has shown that he is willing to charge people if they make the slightest misstatement. The president is not someone who is obsessed with the facts. The president is someone who often makes statements that are inaccurate, and they feel that the president could be put in a position where he's in a very intense interview, he tries to explain things, and he says stuff that is not true.
This has gone on for roughly 8 months now. What's the next step now that the president's attorneys have countered the counter?
Well, that's the thing. The president's lawyers have said for basically that period of time, that 8 months, that they're about 2 weeks away from making a decision about whether he's going to do the interview or not. And here we are still going along with this sort of back and forth with Mueller. They still have not officially said to Mueller, we're not going to do the interview. So the question is, does Mueller basically say, all right, that enough's enough. I can see here that we're not going to come to terms on an interview. I'm going to go ahead and subpoena the president, setting off this fight? Or do the president's lawyers come back and formally say, look, we're not going to do that? Are we officially at a breaking point, or will they continue to negotiate? There's some question, does Mueller want to subpoena the president closer to the midterms? That would really make it a political issue, and I think there's some thought that Mueller would not want to be seen as entering what some folks call as Comey territory, the period of time before the election where Comey was forced to made that announcement about the Hillary Clinton email investigation.
All right, Michael Schmidt, one of the reporters here at the New York Times, going through his reporting there. Let me turn once again to Elise Jordan here. And Elise, we should note that one sitting president, to my knowledge, if I remember correctly, just Bill Clinton, has been subpoenaed. And to prevent one of these prolonged court battles that Michael was just alluding to, he ultimately volunteered to sit down for this interview. It doesn't sound as if President Trump is going to do that. Political fallout. Is there any political fallout if at the end of the day the president ultimately refuses to sit down with Robert Mueller and Mueller has to figure out a way to conclude his investigation without talking to the president? Will there be any sort of fallout?
Well, if Donald Trump does not sit down with Robert Mueller, he looks like he's hiding something. He looks like he isn't up for the challenge of being interviewed and being forthright about what happened. And so that creates the impression that he is indeed hiding something. And Donald Trump does not want to be seen as cowering from a fight. If anything, we know his style throughout the entirety of the presidential campaign and to this date is to attack back, to always keep pushing forward. He thinks that he can get in a room and he can convince Kim Jong-un to unilaterally just relinquish his nuclear program. That is the way that Donald Trump thinks and operates. And just for some back history, when fellow MSNBC contributor Tim O'Brien wrote the book Trump Nation and reported on Donald Trump's finances, and Donald Trump sued him for $5 billion for irreparable harm to his reputation. And when they finally got Donald Trump in court when he finally sat down for depositions, he told about 30 lies, and he said that his income fluctuated based on how he was feeling. And so that is the kind of performance that Donald Trump's lawyers certainly want to avoid.
Elise Jordan, thank you. Jason Johnson, appreciate your insight. Michael Schmidt from the New York Times on the phone with his breaking news. On the anniversary weekend of Charlottesville, a new film tells the backstory of a black police officer who managed to infiltrate the KKK back in the 1970s. My interview with the man who portrays him in this new film about the importance of the movie in this era. But first, more than 4,000 firefighters in Northern California are trying desperately to gain some ground on that record-setting Mendocino complex fire. The fire has already destroyed dozens of homes, now threatens at least 11,000 structures. At least 2 firefighters have been hurt so far, and fire crews are saying that they don't expect to gain control until sometime in September. It is the largest fire in the history of a state that's unfortunately become well known for wildfires. The fire itself right now, roughly the size of Los Angeles.
Alice is living with metastatic breast cancer, which is breast cancer that is spread to other parts of her body. She's also taking prescription Ibrance with an aromatase inhibitor, which is for postmenopausal women with hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative metastatic breast cancer as the first hormonal-based therapy. Ibrance plus letrozole was significantly more effective at delaying disease progression versus letrozole. Patients taking Ibrance can develop low white blood cell counts, which may cause serious infections that can lead to death. Before taking Ibrance, tell your doctor if you have fever, chills, or other signs of infection, liver or kidney problems, are pregnant, breastfeeding, or plan to become pregnant. Common side effects include low red blood cell and low platelet counts, infections, tiredness, nausea, sore mouth, abnormalities in liver blood tests, diarrhea, hair thinning or loss, vomiting, rash, and loss of appetite. Alice calls it her new normal, because a lot has changed, but a lot hasn't. Ask your doctor about Ibrance, the #1 prescribed FDA-approved oral combination treatment for HR-positive, HER2-negative MBC. And done.
Someone over at Buckhead?
Done.
Oh, so you're coming this week?
Wayfair.com.
A bad day on the road still beats a good one off it. Progressive helps keep you out there.
Banquet Mega Bowls, piled high with creamy mashed potatoes, corn, and shredded cheese under a savory blanket of gravy. But that's not all, because we topped it with crispy hunks of protein-packed chicken. Now that's mega.
We've got exciting news at North Hollywood Toyota. We've teamed up with Kelley Blue Book, and we're now your trade-in headquarters. Get an instant cash or trade-in offer based on Kelley Blue Book values right inside our dealership. Best part is, it's free.
Like you said, it's free.
Get an instant Kelley Blue Book quote online today at NorthHollywoodToyota.com.
So trade in your car today and drive away in a brand new Toyota. North Hollywood Toyota. Let's go places.
The best way to get more out of your Spectrum services is to create your own unique username and password. Go to Spectrum.net to follow the simple steps to create your username. Now you can log into popular channel apps and the Spectrum TV app to watch TV wherever you are. And if you're an internet customer, you can use your username and password to enjoy access to a nationwide network of Wi-Fi hotspots. Head to Spectrum.net to create your username today.
As the nation prepares to revisit last year's deadly racially charged violence in Charlottesville, filmmaker Spike Lee is taking his storytelling skills to another era of racial tension in this country, the 60s and 70s. His new film is based on a true story of a black Colorado police officer who managed to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan. I sat down with the film star John David Washington to talk about his role, the film, and its many parallels to the racial tensions that exist in America today.
Might be the man to open things up around here.
Sometimes the role of a lifetime comes via text. How did you land this gig?
So I was on location for another film in Cincinnati, and I get a text saying, yo, Spike called me.
Spike, as in legendary director Spike Lee. The filmmaker wanted actor John David Washington to play the lead in Black Klansman, a movie based on the real-life story of a Colorado detective, Ron Stallworth,
God bless white America,
who infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan in the 1970s.
Chief, Black Ron Stallworth over the phone, white Ron Stallworth face-to-face, so there becomes a combined Ron Stallworth. Can you do that? I believe we can with the right white man. We can do anything.
What was the film about for you?
Seeing a group of people help this African-American man achieve the goal to execute this mission. They believed in the case, they believed in him, and they did not look like him, you know, in that time in Colorado Springs.
The movie is funny, relevant, and at times tough to watch. Most difficult scene in the movie for you? What was
banquet scene.
The true white American race, the backbone from whence came our great Southern heritage.
The banquet scene, it felt the most authentic. All those hoods and the celebration of this institution of hate, and even talking and hang out with the fellow actors that were playing Klansmen. You know, we had to joke around between takes, like really just try to get out of it, shake it off, because of how real it felt that day.
Black Klansman isn't John David's first foray into a Spike Lee film. At 9, he appeared in Malcolm X.
I'm Malcolm X!
Co-starring with a certain other actor with the same last name.
We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
John David Washington is Denzel's son. And lest you forget, the son of Pauletta Washington. As you got started in this business, being the son of Denzel Washington was...
And Pauletta Washington.
And Paul, thank you.
Who was earning more money than he was when they married, before they got married. She was on Broadway working. She paid for the first date. She paid the bill, paid the cab ride. So, you know, a classically trained pianist, went to Juilliard. You know, she's a great artist in her own right, you know, and I learned a lot from her. My father taught me how to hunt. My mother taught me how to love.
Seeing Dad act on one of the toughest stages hooked the young J.D.
My father I did Shakespeare in the Park when I think I was 4 years old, and Richard III. Seeing him up there limping with this, he had this sort of like mullet going on. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was like, I want to do that.
But instead of running into that same spotlight, John David initially ran from it and onto the football field.
As he started to become successful, people started changing around me. You know, it gave me a little anxiety, resentment, anger. So all those emotions that were happening to me, I filtered them through this outlet, football.
Football carried him through college and briefly into the pros before an injury closed the door on the game and opened another for acting.
Yeah, look.
Playing Ricky Jarrett in HBO's Ballers.
You didn't leave us for me to help me. You left because you are a coward.
Now with Black Klansman, John David is set to make his own mark on Hollywood. And if the standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival is any indication, Washington is well on his way. Ken, the reaction when the film stopped?
It's like winning the Super Bowl. I never won anything when I played. That felt amazing.
The film, by the way, Washington's 8th and Spike Lee's 83rd, opens on Friday. 44 years ago today, in an evening televised address, President Richard Nixon bowed to pressure from the public and Congress and became the first president in American history to resign. Here's a flashback.
America needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad. To continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
44 years ago today. That's going to wrap up this hour of MSNBC Live. Katie Turr is standing by. I'll see you tomorrow morning on Today and right back here tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock.
Craig Melvin, thank you very much.
Have a good show.
It is 11 a.m. out west and 2 p.m. in New York, where we are following breaking news. Republican Congressman Chris Collins has been arrested and will appear in court at any moment. The New York representative is accused of insider trading, tipping off his son and family to a failed drug trial before the results were made public.
As alleged in the indictment, Congressman Collins cheated our markets and our justice system in two ways. First, he tipped his son to confidential corporate information at the expense of regular investors, and then he lied about it to law enforcement to cover it up. These charges are a reminder that this is a nation of laws and that everybody stands equal before the bar of justice.
Collins is one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters in Congress. He was the very first lawmaker to endorse Donald Trump's campaign during a time when almost nobody in the mainstream GOP would touch the then candidate. According to the 30-page indictment, Collins knowingly broke the law while he was standing on the south lawn of the White House when he got a private email along with the rest of the company's board of directors from the head of the pharmaceutical company. It began with, "I have bad news to report," and informed them the drug trial was a failure. Collins was at the 2017 congressional picnic when he got the news. 15 minutes later, again, while he was at the White House, he called his son over and over. On the 7th call, when his son finally picked up, prosecutors allege Collins tipped his son off about the failed test. The following morning, the indictment says Cameron Collins started offloading his own stock. But prosecutors say he did not stop there. Cameron Collins also told his fiancée and her father. All told, the congressman and his family avoided over $768,000 in losses, according to the document. And the big question we're asking today is, what does the arrest of Congressman Collins mean for the midterms? Joining me, NBC News political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, NBC News investigations reporter Tom Winter, New York Times chief Metro political correspondent Shane Goldmacher, and former federal prosecutor and former SEC enforcement attorney Seth Waxman. Tom, I do want to start with you because you've been following this. You were downtown a little bit earlier today. Here's a statement from Collins' lawyer saying we will answer the charges filed against Congressman Collins in court and will mount a vigorous defense to clear his good name. It is notable that even the government does not allege that Congressman Collins traded a single share of Innate Therapeutics stock. We are confident he will be completely vindicated and exonerated. Congressman Collins will have more to say on this issue later today. Collins did not sell his own stock.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, the indictment makes that clear. He couldn't sell his own stock because this company, which was based in Australia, they had halted shares pending the news that Collins had received. So he was not in a position to be able to trade his shares. However, the issue that he has from a legal perspective is when you're on a board of directors, you can't take information that hasn't been released publicly yet and trade on that information or let other people know about it unless it's been released publicly. If he had known this information and then the company put out a press release and then his son had traded the stock, we're not sitting here talking. There's no legal issue at that point. But what he's been charged with here is taking that information, just as you read before, picking up the phone and calling his son, and then his son starts putting in sell orders on the U.S. markets, which were not frozen at that time. And so they were able to avoid those losses that you referred to earlier.
And again, this is coming out of the SDNY, also investigating Michael Cohen. We should note that. But they seem to certainly come prepared for this. They came out with phone logs. They had dollar amounts. They had text messages. They knew where Collins was when he was making these phone calls.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the amount of detail that's stated in here, they clearly have his emails because they have his reply to the company's CEO once he received this information. Wow, makes no sense. How are these results even possible? Three question marks. So they have a ton of evidence here that they've already laid out in the indictment. We as reporters love it because we get a lot of detail and a really good sense of this case. But it just shows the depth of which they were able to investigate this ahead of time. There's a number of co-conspirators. It's certainly possible that they might be in a position to offer additional details to the government. Obviously,
the co-conspirators are family.
Yeah, they're family. In one case, it's his son's fiancée is one of the identified co-conspirators.
And they could be potentially witnesses for the government?
They could potentially be witnesses for the government. We've seen no filings to that, no public indications to that. We want to be clear. But all those people, their communications that they have, any communications that they have with brokers, the SEC said at the press conference that they have recorded telephone conversations for side of things, so those do exist in this case, and obviously they have a tremendous amount of trade logs, so they'll know exactly when people logged on to their online accounts to be able to trade this, the exact orders that they put in. When you come to trying to track stock trades, particularly when they're done through public markets like this, it's really easy for the SEC. We're not talking about SEC Capital and Steve Cohen and some of those infamous insider trading cases where they were using dark pool platforms. They're routing shares through the New York Stock Exchange. They're routing shares through all sorts of different brokerage houses. These people traded stock much the way you and I would trade stock.
This is much more straightforward.
This is much more straightforward. It's pretty brazen, actually.
We're going to get to more of the legal aspects of this in a moment. And again, this hasn't come out of nowhere. Collins, there were already questions about Collins' trading for the past year and a half or so. But let's bring in Chuck Todd to talk about the politics of this. Today was not a good day for Republicans by all accounts. This Collins news only made it worse. The Buffalo Times is reporting that they received an email that said Collins is going to continue running for his seat this November. Chuck, what does this mean for the midterms?
Well, look, first of all, it's a very complicated process, it appears. And Collins would have to cooperate, saying he would want to resign his seat, would want to pull out of the nomination. If you want to do that, remember, those in New York State wondering, wait a minute, the primaries haven't happened yet. Oh, no, your congressional primaries already happened. It's your state level, the Cynthia Nixon, Andrew Cuomo, and the other state races, non-federal races. Those primaries still haven't happened. But Collins already certified. So the process is very complicated. But if you're the Republican Party this morning, it was already a bad night. And then before 9:30 a.m., you've got an arrested congressman. And by the way, in a totally unrelated situation, there is a local special prosecutor appointed in Virginia Beach to look at another incumbent congressman, a Republican, who apparently had campaign operatives falsifying petition signatures to get a third candidate on the ballot. Point is, you're having a bad legal day on Wednesday after a horrendous political day on Tuesday. But here's what I would say about this seat. It's a Republican seat. It's strongly held. But I'm having flashbacks to 1994, a big wave year for Republicans that year. There was a Democrat by the name of Dan Rostenkowski, longtime Democrat, very solid Democratic district. And the Democrats thought, well, rather than resign, he can hold the seat, and then they can win in a special maybe in the spring. Well, a Republican won the seat in the fall. So I would say all bets are off. When you're under a criminal investigation by the federal government and you're on a ballot, I don't care how solid your district is, you're probably politically in trouble. And the Democratic candidate there is a local elected official. He's not just some gadfly. So I think it's an added headache to the Republican Party's hopes of trying to control the House.
Chuck, listen, Chris Collins is far from the only lawmaker to come under federal scrutiny or to be under this sort of investigation. Bob Menendez was under investigation, the Democratic senator from New Jersey, and he kept his seat in the Senate during that time. He was ultimately not acquitted, but there was not a hung jury or mistrial. But Chuck, in terms of the broader question about what the Republican Party is facing in the fall, and the broader question of how this government is being run under Donald Trump and how swampy it looks under Donald Trump, to have one of his earliest and most vocal supporters be arrested for, as Tom Winter pointed out, pretty brazen, according to prosecutors, insider trading.
You know, it's funny. Many of the wave years that I've experienced covering politics the last 25 years, it's sort of like there's a political problem, and then all of a sudden the political problem leads to the corruption problem starts surfacing. Happened to the Democrats in '94. They were already dealing with a political problem. Then suddenly, as more people realize, oh, there's a corruption stink, and it almost makes the wave stronger. It happened in 2006 with the Republicans. They already were having problems because of the Iraq War. There was a corruption stink, and all of a sudden, Democrats got stronger, and they had an even better night. That's the danger here for the Republicans, is that there's a larger narrative that it's not just the president's unpopularity, but hey, boy, is there a kleptocracy going on in Washington? Do they not think the rules apply to them? Look at the last 72 hours, Katie. I think you and I have been texting back and forth. Whether it's the Forbes story on Wilbur Ross and the idea that it accused him of being a grifter of sorts, a billionaire grifter in his history, the Commerce Secretary. Or the story by ProPublica today about 3 Mar-a-Lago club members being unofficial senior advisors to the VA, none of whom ever served in the military, mind you. Or the story, or watching the Manafort and Gates trial, where the two of them are sort of swamp creatures and how they did business in Washington. Now throwing Chris Collins. All of these people are close, have some sort of close friendship with the president. So it only sort of adds to an ugly stew that is already difficult for the Republican Party to deal with in November. And I think you throw in the ingredient of corruption, and it can supercharge a political atmosphere for a political party.
Not to mention the reporting by our own Anna Schechter and Cynthia McFadden about the Trump Hotel. I
left out the Saudis of the Trump. There's that. Never mind. I think there's a couple. I mean, you're right. Again.
It's continual. There's story after story about how this administration is taking advantage of their position or things they're doing wrong when they are in a position of power. Shane, you've been covering this story as well. This is far from the first time that we've been hearing Chris Collins' name in connection with questions, at the very least, about his trading. Jake Sherman's First Read in January 2017, a year and a half ago, notes that Chris Collins was overheard talking loudly into a phone just off the House floor, bragging about how many millionaires I've made in Buffalo in the last month. He was bragging about a stock tip he had shared with people.
Yeah, I mean, you heard Chuck talk about this as well, right? This was brazen, allegedly, because he was already under investigation when he made this phone call to his son that federal prosecutors say happened on the White House lawn. Congress was already looking into his ties to this company, in which he had other members of Congress buying and investing in. So for Chris Collins to be doing this, allegedly, while at the White House, while knowingly under investigation, is really quite a bold step. And I think, as Chuck said, this adds to this question of swampiness, right? All of these things add together. This is an indictment during a corruption trial after other allegations among other people in the administration. And it all adds up to sort of more and more bad news for the Republican Party right now.
And Seth, the indictment itself, 30 pages, pretty detailed. What sort of case is this?
Well, this looks like a straightforward insider trading case where you have two parties that are typically culpable. You have the tipper, in this case Representative Collins, and the tippee, his son. The tipper, Representative Collins, had material, non-public information, shared it with his son, and his son shared it with others, and the people receiving that information dumped their stock to avoid losses. And the other thing that really stood out to me in the indictment is you have these unindicted co-conspirators, and you have this call that took place between Congressman Collins and his son, and they describe in the indictment what was said during that call. That tells me that one of those unindicted co-conspirators may be talking and explaining to federal law enforcement what either the son or Representative Collins said during that call.
And let's put up a full screen of the timeline that was in the indictment of the moments after Collins learned of this trial failure and what he did in those following moments. At 6:55 p.m. on June 22nd, 2017, Innate Immunotherapeutics Chief Executive Simon Wilkinson informed Collins by email that the test for the drug had failed. 15 minutes later, Collins called his son and told his son about the failed drug test. June 23rd, 2017, at 7:42 a.m., when the stock market was open for trading again, Cameron Collins sold more than 16,500 shares of Innate Immunotherapeutics stock. Later that day, Cameron Collins placed 17 more orders to sell the stock. 3 days later, Cameron Collins placed an additional 36 sell orders. June 27, 2017, news of its failed drug test became public, and the stock plummeted by more than 90%. What's going to happen to Cameron Collins and the others that are named in this indictment, Seth?
Well, they look like they're in for a really long and difficult battle. I mean, you don't even need an insider or a cooperator to tell you what that looks like. I mean, circumstantially, those calls and that timing and that trading is kind of classic insider trading. So they've got an uphill battle. You throw on top of that maybe 1, 2, or maybe as many as 6, as we're seeing in the indictment, unindicted co-conspirators, which may mean that they're under indictment, a separate indictment where it's sealed and they've pled guilty, or maybe they've been given immunity. And goodness, we've heard enough about that in the Gates trial that's going on right now. So it looks like everyone involved in this most recent indictment involving Representative Collins have a difficult legal battle facing them.
Shane, one last thing politically speaking. The House Ethics Committee started investigating Collins' stock trading a year and a half ago, around the time that these questions came up, and he was overheard on the phone bragging about the folks he'd made rich. One of those people, Tom Price. At that time, when the House Ethics Committee was investigating the stock trades, Collins' spokesperson called it a, quote, partisan witch hunt. Sound familiar?
That sounds very familiar. And Collins has already been racking up legal bills from that House ethics investigation, as well as maybe now this federal investigation. He's already spent $250,000 from his campaign funds to his lawyers. He has $1.3 million left, but he's up for re-election. It looks like he wants to run for re-election. It's tough to get off the ballot. How much of that money does he want to spend on a campaign versus dipping into his own money to defend himself in a legal battle here that could be sending him to jail?
Shane Goldmacher, Seth Waxman, Tom Winter, and Chuck Todd, who had to run because he's got his own show to do. Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And breaking news from the New York Times, Team Trump has responded to Robert Mueller's request for an interview with the president. Michael Schmidt, the New York Times reporter who broke that story, joins me next.
I don't keep track of regrets. I never count the wrinkles. And I don't add up the years. But what I do count on is staying happy and healthy. So I add protein, vitamins, and minerals to my diet with Boost.
New Boost High Protein Nutritional Drink now has 33% more high-quality protein, along with 26 essential vitamins and minerals your body needs, all with guaranteed great taste.
The upside? I'm just getting started.
Boost High Protein. Be up for life.
I was looking for somebody who wanted to find love.
At eHarmony, we ask you questions so that we can match you for a lasting connection.
I found my person.
I really found my true love on eHarmony.
eHarmony.com, the #1 trusted dating site. Start for free today.
Your paycheck. Your family depends on it. But if something happened to you, you need life insurance. And chances are SelectQuote can get it for you for under $1 a day.
Select Quote found Michael, 38, a $500,000 policy for under $23 a month. Select Quote found Anna, 37, a $750,000 policy for under $22 a month. Select Quote's secret? They comparison shop a select group of great companies like these for your best rate. Give your family the security they need at a price you can afford. Since 1985, SelectQuote has saved over 1 million families millions of dollars on life insurance.
Call now. 1-800-772-8300. That's 1-800-772-8300. Or go to SelectQuote.com.
Discover what over 1 million families know. We shop, you save.
George woke up in pain, but he has plans today. So he took a leave. If he'd taken Tylenol, he'd be stopping for more pills right now. Only Aleve has the strength to stop tough pain for up to 12 hours with just one pill. Aleve. All days.
Laptops, smartphones, tablets, gaming consoles, smart TVs. Sound like your home? Then check out Spectrum Internet. It delivers you faster download speeds and better performance than anyone else. Best of all, a free modem is included. Enjoy Spectrum Internet.
At Smile Direct Club, we believe everyone deserves a smile they'll love. That's why for 60% less than braces, we send invisible aligners directly to you. We straighten most smiles in an average of 6 months.
The process was much shorter than we anticipated, and Smile Direct Club's price and cutting out the middleman was tremendous.
I also like the fact that we didn't have to make any appointments. I can integrate it into whatever my schedule was.
Get your confidence back risk-free. Our Smile Guarantee ensures that if aligners aren't a good fit for you, you get your money back.
Just having that beautiful smile, that confidence, and having everybody else see that as well is really special.
Say I do to a smile you'll love at SmileDirectClub.com.
A very busy news day.
Today's high-stakes confrontation.
Let's go live to the border where our colleague... Exclusive video.
The country's top intelligence officials testifying.
NBC News gets an exclusive look inside.
Live here at the nation's capital.
There's now an open investigation.
Blockbuster new reporting today on this.
This is the deadliest school shooting.
The Supreme Court upheld the revised version.
Well, this new report comes amid a staggering amount of news.
Breaking news tonight exclusively here.
NBC News was first out with this scoop
today.
It's
been an extraordinary night watching this develop. So, a lot to talk about.
Breaking news, the New York Times is reporting that the president's legal team has rejected the special counsel's terms for an interview. Quote, President Trump's lawyers countered on Wednesday with an offer that suggested a narrow path for answering questions, people familiar with the matter said. Joining me on the phone, one of the reporters on that byline, Michael Schmidt of the New York Times. Also with me, NBC News White House correspondent Kristen Welker. She spoke with Rudy Giuliani earlier today. And senior fellow in governance studies at the Brookings Institution, Ben Wittes. He's also an MSNBC legal analyst and editor-in-chief of Lawfare. Michael Schmidt, this is your reporting. Let's start with you. I want to read another portion from your article. By making another counter-proposal after months of promises that they were just weeks away from deciding about an interview, Mr. Trump's lawyers run the risk that Mr. Mueller could conclude they are negotiating in bad faith to prolong the investigation. In a meeting with Mr. Trump's lawyers this year, Mr. Mueller threatened to subpoena the president if he did not sit for a voluntary interview. Could you argue, Michael, that Rudy Giuliani and the president's lawyers are playing a game of chicken with Mr. Mueller's team?
Well, there's a calculation among some folks in Trump's world that Mueller will not want to subpoena the president, that he will be afraid of losing in court, and if he loses there, then it's going to hurt the credibility of the investigation. So they think that they can sort of try and narrow the questions for a voluntary interview, and Mueller will eventually sort of give it and say, okay, I need an interview with the president to complete this investigation. I'll go forward with that. The problem is that law enforcement officials who've worked with Mueller and legal experts say they find it hard to believe that Mueller will not do everything he can to try and get the president to answer questions, including taking the risk and going to court if necessary to get the president to talk.
When they talk about a narrower scope, what exactly do they want, Michael?
Well, the president's lawyers have gone back and forth about this, but they want as many of these questions to be in writing as possible. They want the president to not have to answer that many of them orally. There's a concern about what the president would say if the president would veer off the path and provide inaccurate or false testimony. So that's one of the big issues. The other one is that they don't want the president to have to answer a lot of the obstruction questions. The problem is is that so many of the questions Mueller wants to ask the president are about obstruction, about his relationship with Jim Comey, about the actions he took. Was he trying to impede the Russia investigation? That is much more the focus of the questions than collusion. Just in regards to ties to Russia, there's not as much in that bucket as there is questions about the president's conduct as president and in regards to the investigation.
And presumably questions about the Trump Tower meeting and Donald Trump's role in drafting that statement for his son, Don Jr.
Correct. They want to ask him, why was it that the White House helped arrange the president himself dictating this statement that was misleading? And that was that designed to send investigators off the scent of the path of, of evidence? Or was it, something just political, that they were just trying to deal with the political problem? Why is it that the president went to such levels to try and put this information out that was not true about the meeting?
Ben Wittes, it seems like the president's lawyers are really concerned that their clients will perjure himself, number one. So what's the game theory on this if you're on Mueller's side? What is Mueller's next step?
So I think your earlier question, whether this is an elaborate game of chicken, you're really onto something. We're about to learn how much Mueller really wants or needs an interview with President Trump. Because one possibility is that he actually doesn't need it in order to finish up the investigation. He has just been going through this extended exercise to bend over backwards and show that he is giving the president every opportunity to answer questions. And if the president doesn't want to, he'll just move on and finish the investigation without talking to him. The other possibility is that he actually really needs the president's input on these questions in order to resolve this responsibly, in which case I think at this point you will see a subpoena very quickly, because clearly at this point I don't think the president's lawyers, a reasonable observer would say they were negotiating in good faith at this point. So at this point, if you're looking for that you really need the interview, you got to move forward with the subpoena at this point.
But hold on, Ben. If they don't interview the president, do they open themselves up to a charge from Donald Trump's supporters or people who are not supportive of this investigation, a charge of not really covering all their bases? Could there be a public perception problem with their conclusion if they don't sit down with the president himself?
So I think that is why they have gone through this extended effort to give the president an opportunity to be interviewed, and they've provided subjects that they want to talk about, and they've really taken a lot of time with it. And I think that maybe if you believe that they're going to move on without a subpoena, that may be an effort to alleviate exactly the public perception problem that you're describing. On the other hand, it could be an effort to get questions answered in a negotiated framework without issuing the subpoena that you really do need to have answered. And if that's the situation you're dealing with, they're going to be running out of thread at this point, and I think you'll see the subpoena issue relatively quickly.
Kristen Walker, I know you've been going back and forth with Rudy Giuliani on this quite often. It seems like you guys have a conversation nearly every day about whether or not Donald Trump will sit down with special counsel Robert Mueller. Also, clearly the president has his mind on this. He tweets about it all the time, and then Lindsey Graham golfed with him over the weekend and said the president mentioned this a bunch of times, which prompted Lindsey Graham to give him some advice. Listen to what Graham told Fox News.
Why don't the two of you step up and stop the Mueller investigation?
Well, did Trump ask that question? He must have mentioned that about 20 times. I told the president, I know you don't like it. I know you feel put upon. You just got to ride it out. I want to win in November. If we stop the Mueller probe, you wouldn't be able to talk about anything else.
My apologies. That was roll call, not Fox News. Kristen?
Well, look, I think it speaks to the fact that, as we've seen play out on Twitter and even in his public comments, President Trump is growing increasingly frustrated with this investigation. And by all accounts, if you talk to his lawyers, Rudy Giuliani, they say, look, he wants to sit down and do this interview because he thinks he can effectively put an end to it by doing that. Now, has he changed his opinion in recent days? We know that he's gone back and forth on this. But what do his lawyers think, Katie? His lawyers have been pretty insistent. They don't really want him to do this interview. As Michael Schmidt reported, their counter-proposal includes proposals that are narrower than what Robert Mueller had offered. This has been going on since January, Katie, back and forth, and they haven't been able to agree to terms, and that's largely because his attorneys are very concerned about the potential impact of the president having to answer questions in person and not in writing. We know that Mueller has said, look, some of the questions can be in writing, but again, they don't want him to have to answer questions about his time in office. And so this continues to go back and forth. Where is it going to end? What's the outcome going to be? I can tell you, I spoke, as you said, with Rudy Giuliani today. He said it will be a legitimate offer to find a way to do an interview. It won't be a refusal. So he is trying to stress that negotiations are still open. But Katie, increasingly, it seems like these two sides are deadlocked.
No doubt about that. Kristen, you are staying with us, so hold on. Michael Schmidt and Ben Wittes, thank you very much. Up next, it's been a bad day for Republicans.
There's a common thread I see every time I'm in the field. While this is burning, you were saving other homes. Neighbors helping neighbors, and strangers alike.
This is what America's about.
Sometimes it's nice to see all the good that's out there. Bringing folks out, we have seen it in community after community.
So you just walk around telling people Geico could help them save money on car insurance?
Yeah, that, and homeowners, renters, motorcycle and boat insurance.
Huh, that's nice. What happens when you catch a fish?
Oh!
Geico, more than just car insurance. See how much you could save at geico.com.
I'm okay!
My mom is getting older, and projects around the house aren't as easy for her to handle by herself, but I can't always be there when she needs me. So when her roof started to leak, I went to Home Advisor and found the right pro to help. I can read their reviews, check their credentials, and it's free to use. If anything comes up with my mom's home and I'm not available, Home Advisor always is.
Go to homeadvisor.com or download the free app.
Home Advisor. You thought that bandage would protect me? See the new skin over there? How could you not know it's the flexible liquid bandage? It seals out bad stuff like water and dirt. Hey, there's a spray, too.
New skin. Apply, seal, heal.
When my business started offering online purchases, orders took off. But we didn't have enough cash flow to sustain our inventory. Thankfully, we found Bluevine. Within hours, I was approved for a $75,000 line of credit. Bluevine's line of credit is better than a typical business loan. I have access to cash on demand, and I only pay for what I use. Thanks to Bluevine, I'll never have to scramble for financing again, and I can focus on growing my business.
Get up to $250,000 in as fast as 24 hours. Visit Bluevine.com and apply today.
Hey, renovators. Time to dream bigger.
Wayfair, you're my new secret weapon. You got what I need for my renovation. I love all these options, so much to choose from. Bedrooms and basements, even my kitchen, your service is sweet. And what you love is complete. Wayfair, here I come.
Start your renovation at wayfair.com.
Your hair's so soft. Did you use Head and Shoulders 2-in-1?
I did, Mom. Wanna try it?
Yes.
It intensely moisturizes your hair and scalp and keeps you flake-free.
Manolo, look at my soft hair. I should be in the shot now, too. Try Head and Shoulders 2-in-1.
Summer's calling. The 2018 Cadillacs are ready to move. Our best offers on 2018 models are here. Join us for the Made to Move sales event. Get 0% APR financing for 60 months plus $2,000 down payment assistance from Finance through GM Financial on most 2018 models.
It's a golden opportunity to experience the versatility of utility. With the highest form of luxury and the highest function of capability, you can be in your element, in any element. Experience a range of SUVs perfect for any adventure at the Lexus Golden Opportunity Sales Event.
Lease the 2018 NX300 for $329 a month for 36 months.
Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Live. Wednesday. Sorry, we were playing along in the middle of the break. Wednesday, August 8th, 2018. Not a great day to be a Republican, which is why we were playing Bad Day by Daniel Powter. You caught us. First, we're following that breaking news out of New York. Republican Congressman Chris Collins was arrested this morning and is in court this hour on charges of insider trading. And in Virginia, a special prosecutor has been appointed to investigate allegations that aides to Republican Congressman Scott Taylor forged signatures in order to gin up support for a third-party challenger, meant to siphon away votes from his Democratic opponent in November. Meanwhile, in Ohio's 12th, the results are too close to call still, although it does appear as though Republican Troy Balderson is going to just barely eke out a victory by less than 1%. Not exactly good news for a district that President Trump won by 11 points back in 2016 and has not been held by a Democrat in decades. Joining me, senior writer for Politico, Jake Sherman, who is in Ohio, Weekly Standard editor-at-large, Bill Kristol, and Washington Post political columnist Dana Milbank. Jake, forgive me for not listening to Fish in the break, but let's talk about the bad day for Republicans. Just put it all into perspective for us. What is this Collins arrest doing for, at the very least, Republican Party morale today?
I mean, we put this pretty plainly in the afternoon edition of Playbook, which is Republicans are giving Democrats something that Democrats have been yearning for, which is a corruption election cycle like they had in 2006. Collins was arrested, took calls about inside stock tips at a White House picnic. A bunch of members of Congress were also invested in this stock, but they've not been implicated. You have this major ProPublica story that dropped today that talks about how President Trump's friends were directing VA policy, although they said they weren't profiting from it. You have Paul Manafort on trial in Virginia in a very public and very intense trial that doesn't exactly involve Trump. But listen, Democrats can feasibly make the point, and they're going to, according to the people I talk to, that Republicans are not good stewards of the government and cannot be trusted with the levers of power. And this, again, you mentioned it, Katie, but we're talking about Ohio 12, a district that, as you noted, went for Trump by double digits, 11 points. Republicans should have won this in a walk. These kinds of seats, R+7s, districts that Republicans win by 7 points or more, these are the heart of the Republican majority. If Democrats find a way to make these winnable, to put these in play, the majority is gone. And if you talk to almost any Republican, they said if they had lost last night, they would have not been able to make a credible argument to donors or to anybody that they could keep the majority. So they are in a really tough spot. They're trying to figure out where they go when the lights go out.
And remind us again, when it comes to Collins, how much control did he have over things like pharmaceutical companies, and how could that be problematic?
I mean, let's just be completely clear. He was on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which has direct oversight over the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry. So I don't know. I haven't reviewed his entire legislative record in the hours since he's been indicted. I'm sure people are. But he had the power to be involved in legislation, or at least vote on legislation that could have had an impact on the medical industry. So that much we know. He's no longer on that committee. Paul Ryan removed him from it today, but he's under indictment for what are pretty serious charges. So it'll be interesting to see how long Collins can last in Congress. Now, Republicans have pointed out that some Democrats who were indicted remained in Congress for some time, and there is truth to that. But we are 90 days from an election, so whether it's feasible or not to have somebody who's under indictment in Congress, somebody who is a close advisor to the president, remains to be seen.
There's 23 seats that Democrats need to take the House. There are 60 Republican-held seats that are less favorable than Ohio's 12th district. Bill Kristol, what's your advice for Republicans right now?
Well, they're in a tough position. There should be a Democratic wave. The Republicans should lose the House. They could lose the Senate. I've talked to several political operatives on both sides in the last 24 hours, and I'm struck by they think that's the case too. they're a little worried if they're Democrats, or hopeful if they're Republicans, that the Democrats don't really have the apparatus, though, to pull them all out at the end. You know, you got to win these races at the end, and that does depend a little bit, the last point or two, on the ground game, on intelligently targeted advertising, getting young people to vote who aren't inclined to vote normally, things like that. And that's, you know, sophisticated political operatives doing their thing. Democrats have plenty of sophisticated operatives, but the Democratic Congressional Committee is not in good shape. The DNC was left in ruins, really, after the Obama presidency and the Hillary Clinton campaign. A lot of people I know think they should have won, actually, in Ohio. They just failed in some elementary blocking and tackling. Trump is president. He'll do things. He's not going to sit passively and watch the wave run over him. They control Congress. They'll set up votes in September to try to disadvantage the Democrats. Are Schumer and Pelosi on top of their game? I think those are the questions that people have to ask. It should be a Democratic wave, but people I know on both sides, honestly, are a little worried or hopeful that the Democratic operatives and leadership may not be able to take full advantage of it.
Dana, what are the takeaways from last night for the Democratic Party?
I think that what we're seeing is all the sort of oceanographic elements are there to create this wave. We have the message for the Democrats, as Jake was talking about there. They have the fundraising, and in many, if not most cases, are out raising their opponents in these leading races. Turnout is extraordinarily high for Democrats. And you just see a whole lot of enthusiasm. You saw it in Ohio. You saw it with the labor-related ballot initiative in Missouri. You're seeing it in this extraordinary turnout. But there are Democrats should not rest on their laurels here. The game in the House is largely stacked against them. They are going to have to win at least by 7 or 8 percentage points in order to gain those 24 seats they need because of gerrymandering and other factors. Now, if we're talking about a district that Trump and Mitt Romney won by 11, that is now near to break even, well, that's enough. So I think it's clear that a wave is building. It's just not clear that it's going to, hit flood stages.
But then again, I mean, there's still a lot of time before November. We're 90 days out. As we saw in 2016, 90 days was a lifetime. 2 days was a lifetime. Sometimes 2 hours
these days
felt like a lifetime. You never know what might happen, and there's so many variables at play. What I found really interesting about what happened with O'Connor last night, or O'Connor in general during his race, is that there was reporting out of Politico that the Republicans were having a hard time finding a way to hit O'Connor, finding an attack that really landed, until O'Connor had this moment on hardball with Chris Matthews. Take a look.
If you're one of the 218, they need to take control of the House, and the vote on the floor is Pelosi. What are you going to do?
We need to have new leadership on both sides.
So you'd vote against her, even if it meant you didn't get control of the House?
We need leadership.
And you don't get control of the House?
Well, we need to.
If it's a decisive vote, would you vote against Pelosi? If it's decisive,
we need new leadership
you're
on both sides.
You know you have to decide this. Just tell me you know you have to decide it.
No, but we need new leadership.
No, just tell me you know.
The old ways aren't working.
No. You know that for the Democrats can get control, you have to have 218 members of the House vote for the candidate of the Democratic Party for Speaker.
I would support whoever the Democratic Party
Thank you.
So he was going out of his way not to say the name Nancy Pelosi, but Republicans pounced on that and tried to tie him after that to Nancy Pelosi. Bill, why is Nancy Pelosi still such a bogeyman for the Republican Party?
I'm not sure. I'm a little surprised that she is, but Republican operatives whom I trust, who are speak to me, I think honestly off the record, say it just does help if you put up the Pelosi thing. It's sort of she's been around for a long time. She's viewed as a liberal elite from the West Coast, obviously. Schumer from New York, Pelosi from San Francisco. Do you want them making decisions if you're out there in the Midwest? A third of the possible Democratic pickups in the House are from the Midwest. So they think Pelosi turns out their base and even moves some swing voters. That's what's interesting to me. They don't think it's just a base turnout thing. You know what? The best thing one of the things Democrats can do, if Nancy Pelosi announced on October 15th that she is going to spend the next 3 weeks working her heart out for the Democrats to win the House, but she's not going to stand for Speaker. She thinks it's time for someone younger to take over. I think that would create right away a huge advantage for Democrats in those districts where she is a bit of a tough sell.
Dana, what's your take on this?
Well, I think what Democrats should be doing right now is what Nancy Pelosi essentially invited them to in those very difficult races. Say, I'm not going to vote for Nancy Pelosi. I agree with Bill. That would be the best move for the party. She has indicated that she's not going to do that. The other leaders are not going to do that, at least until after the election. But this would be a time for the people in those competitive races to distance themselves from her. And she has said, do what you need to do. That's an invitation.
Jake Sherman had to run to catch a flight, but thank you, Bill Kristol and Dana Milbank. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
And this hour, GOP Congressman Chris Collins is in court on insider trading charges. Up next, his close relationship with the president, which dates back to the 2016 campaign.
Yep. The fact is, there are over 9,600 roads named Park in the U.S. It's America's most popular street name. But all state agents know that's where the similarity stops. If you're on Park Street in Reno, Nevada, the high winds of the Washoe Zephyr could damage your sighting. And that's very different than living on Park Avenue in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, where ice dams could cause water damage. But no matter what park you live on, one of 10,000 local Allstate agents knows yours. Now that you know the truth, are you in good hands?
Why did I want a Crest 3D White Smile? Dinner date. Meeting his parents' dinner date. So I used Crest. Crest 3D White removes 95% of surface stains in just 3 days for a whiter smile that will win them over. Crest. Healthy, beautiful smiles for life.
If you've ever considered getting a walk-in tub, we have great news.
No more cold seats. For a limited time, when you purchase a Safe Step walk-in tub, we'll upgrade your order to include our newest feature, a heated seat.
That's a $600 value. Free.
But that's not all. The new and improved dual hydrotherapy system now has foot massaging jets to help soothe aching feet.
And as always, Safe Step walk-in tubs are built to maximize safety, so you can stay in your home and enjoy the comforts of bathing again.
Call the number on your screen now for more information and a free, no-obligation consultation.
Our new walk-in tub is affordable and could change your life.
Call today for our free, exclusive new shower package. Call 1-800-550-0028. That's 1-800-550-0028.
Oh, gotcha!
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker and is 2 times more absorbent. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
I'm Susanna. I'm on Match looking for someone who's not just my boyfriend, but my best friend.
Looking for a real relationship?
When I'm not at work, you'll typically find me on the beach or hiking with friends. Something I'm good at, the piano. Can't wait to meet you.
Check out Match right now for free.
It's Nutrisystem's Red Hot Sale. Celebrate summer and save 40% off every program, including Turbo 13. Lose up to 13 pounds and 7 inches overall in your first month. Lose weight now. Money back guaranteed.
I'm Marie and I lost 50 pounds with Nutrisystem.
I am so much healthier now.
Nutrisystem delivers your favorite foods made healthier. Perfectly
Why are you
portioned to
watching
fuel and
this?
satisfy.
Count, measure, meetings, not with Nutrisystem.
The 8-day program right now, and we'll rush you Turbo 13 with the new Turbo Takeoff Week with new foods, plus a week of probiotic and delicious Turbo Shakes free to shrink your belly and lose weight.
You'll see results your very first week.
For a limited time, save 40% off every program.
Nutrisystem works.
Do it. Do it now. Don't wait.
Go online or call 888-455-DIET and get shakes free, plus 40% off every program.
You shouldn't be rushed into booking a hotel. With Expedia's add-on advantage, booking a flight unlocks discounts on select hotels until the day you leave for your trip. Add-on advantage, only when you book with Expedia.
Congressman Chris Collins, where's Chris? Where's Chris? Oh, Chris, right from the beginning, he said Trump is going to win. Trump is going to win. That's why I like him.
Oh, Lord.
I didn't like him that much before. Now I love him. I'll never forget.
Chris Collins was the first member of Congress to endorse Donald Trump in 2016. Since then, he's been a close ally of the president. Now this hour in New York, the Republican, who is one of the richest men in Congress, is in court. He's facing federal insider trading charges that include securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and making false statements. Back with me, NBC News White House correspondent Kristen Welker, and also joining us is Washington Post congressional reporter Erica Werner. Kristen, we just played what Donald Trump thinks of Chris Collins. Here is what the U.S. Attorney thinks of Chris Collins today.
Congressman Collins cheated our markets and our justice system. These charges are a reminder that this is a nation of laws and that everybody stands equal before the bar of justice.
That was U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman this morning. Kristen, any word from the White House? Has the president yet commented on Chris Collins?
No word from the White House, Katie, and it's a little surprising because, of course, we've known about this now for several hours. I've reached out to multiple administration officials. I also had a chance to ask Mercy Schlapp, one of the top communications officials here at the White House, for a response. She said, look, I refer you to DOJ. She really didn't want to delve into this issue. This is not just any member of Congress, Katie, as you know. This is the first member of Congress to endorse President Trump, someone who is sort of an informal liaison to the Trump administration in the early days. And so this is someone who the president is going to have a tough time trying to distance himself from when we do get a response. I anticipate we will get one at Twitter at some point. It also raises this question, Katie, about draining the swamp. That was what President Trump vowed to do once he got into office. And this is a key ally who, on the face of it, these charges would suggest is engaging in very swampy behavior. So we await a response from President Trump. Of course, they have their eye on the midterm elections. This makes them undoubtedly even more concerned, particularly in the wake of last night's results, which have some real warning signs for Republicans. Kate.
So there are financial questions around Wilbur Ross right now, the president's commerce secretary. There were financial questions about Tom Price, Donald Trump's former health secretary, who took a lot of private jets on top of that, and first class tickets on the taxpayer's dime. Also, a lot of questions around Scott Pruitt, the former EPA chief, who again spent a lot of taxpayer money inappropriately. Kristen, there's a pattern going on with the folks that Donald Trump is surrounding himself with.
Right, and look at how long it took to get rid of Scott Pruitt, despite the fact that there were all of those questions surrounding him. I mean, this is something that the Trump administration has really struggled with, and so I think this is just one more data point, one more controversy, unwanted controversy, as we get much closer to the midterm elections.
And notable that members of Congress are calling this a serious matter. But so far, none of the leadership is calling for Chris Collins to resign, Erica.
That's right. Speaker Ryan did take this step of kicking Mr. Collins off of the Energy and Commerce Committee, the very powerful committee that he sat on that, in fact, had oversight over drug safety in this country, of course, which goes to the heart of the issue that he was indicted on, the company that he was involved in. And it's worth noting that this issue does play right into Democrats' hands. They had just rolled out in May a new plank in their agenda, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, which was focused on corruption, anti-corruption, draining the swamp. And the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, their response to this indictment was to say that Mr. Collins had run on draining the swamp. Who knew that he meant he was talking about himself?
Just for our viewers' edification, Collins' net worth is $66 million, $15 million in innate immunotherapeutics. That's what he's accused of trading on today, inappropriate trading today. When you consider that, and you consider the way that Donald Trump talked about draining the swamp, Erica, in your experience and covering Congress, how do you see this affecting things going forward? Is this going to be something that will be a daily matter, or will we stop hearing about it pretty quickly?
Well, I think that it depends. It may be hard for Collins to survive in Congress through November, although there are examples like with Michael Graham, the former congressman from Staten Island. He was reelected while under indictment. But I think that we're going to see pressure on Collins perhaps to step aside. He's clearly very damaged goods heading into midterms that obviously are already tough for Republicans, and Democrats are going to try to capitalize on this. There's not a way for Republicans to get him off the ballot unless he agrees to it. So we'll see how it plays out. And I think that the issues that are raised here, for example, the fact that members of Congress are permitted to serve on boards of publicly traded companies as long as they don't receive compensation for that, really kind of bear further scrutiny and may receive that in light of this indictment.
And again, Collins is in court right now. Earlier today, his lawyer said that Collins will have something to say later today. We will keep an eye on that. Kristen Welker and Erica Werner, ladies, thank you very much.
Thanks, Katie.
And scheming, embezzlement, an extramarital affair, is that your idea of a great day? Apparently it is for Paul Manafort.
I have a lead on the great enemy of all people, Adolf Eichmann. The architect of the final solution?
Latest intelligence suggests Buenos Aires.
If you want to get him out alive, we need an elite crew.
I would happily put a bullet in between his eyes, but this is strictly catch and extract.
There's a problem with the fight.
This was a country full of
ex-Nazis. For the sake of our people, do not fail.
Operation Finale, rated PG-13, August 29th.
Let's do an ad of a man eating free waffles at Comfort Inn. They taste like victory because he always gets the lowest price on our rooms guaranteed when he books direct at choicehotels.com.
Or just say bada book, bada boom.
Book now at choicehotels.com.
Hey there, people eligible for Medicare. Give me 2 minutes, and I'll tell you some important things to know about Medicare. First, it doesn't pay for everything. Say this pizza is your Part B medical expenses. This much, about 80%, Medicare will pay for. What's left, this slice here, well, that's on you. And that's where an AARP Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan, insured by United Healthcare Insurance Company, comes in. This type of plan helps pay some of what Medicare doesn't. And these are the only plans to carry the AARP endorsement. That's because they meet their high standards of quality and service. Want to learn more? It's easy. Call United Healthcare Insurance Company now and ask for this free decision guide. Inside, you'll find the range of AARP Medicare supplement plans and their rates. Apply anytime, too. Oh, speaking of time, about a little over halfway, and there's more to tell. Like how with this type of plan, you'll have the freedom to choose any doctor who accepts Medicare patients. Great for staying with the one you know, or finding somebody new, like a specialist. There are no networks and no referrals needed. None. And when you travel, your plan will go with you, anywhere in the country. So, if you're in another state visiting the grandkids, stay a while, enjoy, and know that you'll still be able to see any doctor who accepts Medicare patients. So call United Healthcare today. They are committed to being there for you. Tick, tick, tick. Time for a wrap-up. A Medicare supplement plan helps pay some of what Medicare doesn't. You know, the pizza slice. It allows you to choose any doctor who accepts Medicare patients. And these are the only plans of their kind endorsed by AARP. Phew. Call United Healthcare today and ask for this free decision guide.
Like most people, Mrs. McCabe has several different types of flooring.
I have carpet, tile, and hardwood. I've tried running those machines, but they just don't get them as clean as you do.
Vacuuming and mopping is great for day-to-day cleanings, but nothing gets your home clean and healthy like a professional carpet, tile, or hardwood cleaning from Stanley Steamer.
That's why I call.
Call or go online for our $99 special.
Call 1-800-STEAMER. Stanley Steamer does certified cleaner.
We packed banquet mega bowls full of majestic piles of cheddar mac and cheese smothered in mozzarella. But it wasn't mega. So we topped it with protein-packed chunks of buffalo-style chicken. Now that's mega.
Is this still a normal day at the office? What does that mean exactly? You think that's what he's trying to do? Why are we learning this now? Why is this happening? Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Buckle up, stay with us.
You ready for round two, Mr. Downing? How are you guys feeling?
We're ready.
Ready? You feel good?
We are.
You
Manafort's lawyer on his way into court this morning, where he put another round of tough questions to Rick Gates, Manafort's longtime business partner, who's now the star witness for the prosecution. Remember, Manafort is on trial for financial crimes. He has pleaded not guilty. The bulk of the accusations predate his role as Donald Trump's campaign chairman. Gates, who accepted a plea deal, claims he committed crimes with Manafort, but he also admitted to embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from Manafort. And yesterday, Gates admitted to an extramarital affair that involved maintaining an apartment in London. As my colleagues reported, the topic came up as Kevin Downing, Manafort's attorney, tried to paint Gates as self-motivated and untrustworthy by hammering away at his admitted practice of filing doctored expense reports. Joining me from outside the courthouse in Alexandria is NBC News national security and justice reporter Julia Ainsley. Julia, yesterday Manafort's lawyers left court and said it was a great day for Paul Manafort because, among other things, they got Gates to admit to that affair, and I presume they think they're doing a good job of painting him as a liar?
That's right, and they were confident going in today. The Gates testimony has now wrapped, but not without a little drama.